The story begins with the office where the phone call was heard, violating the silence in the room. The operator girl immediately responded to the call, but the client was very angry about the company's products. As soon as the girl heard all this, she straightened her glasses and thought to herself, "Again it began, and a day." The girl asked what the client's problem was, but he said that she forgot how to understand people. After that, the client put the pipe displeasedly, and the girl yawned with a tired look. The girl's eyes stuck together. She really wanted to sleep and blamed herself for not lying on time, but read the short story. Because of fatigue, the girl closed her eyes, and not noticing this, plunged into a deep dream. After which she suddenly felt another atmosphere, and opening her eyes, she saw the royal chambers and the king on the throne. The king was very angry and asked in a cold tone, "Try to answer the Lord Iton again." Then he began to smile and twist the dagger in his hand, adding, "What is your mistake?" The Lord said, "I apologize, Your Majesty." The girl stood in the crowd and did not understand where she was. Rumors whisper, "Can the Lord find the answer in 3 seconds?" "He must, otherwise it will be hanged as Baron Munyu." The servants whispered, and one of them asked to say quieter so that the king would not hear. The king threw a dagger towards the Lord with fury, stopping talking in the crowd. A wound appeared on the Lord's neck and blood poured. The Lord did not move, only closed his eyes. He looked at the pillow with the daggers of the king, stated, "That's why, only 3 daggers are left." In the midst of the game with bets, "I dared to block His Majesty," said the Lord. The Lord was proudly ready to accept the punishment of the king. Blood flowed from the wound on his neck. The girl thought, why did Lord Iton do this? If the road, life had to be quietly. In the crowd, it was said that covering the cost of a booze from the salary of knights will lead to ruin, and the king wounded the Lord daggers. Suddenly, the girl caught herself thinking and thought, some kind of familiar situation. Then the king directed the dagger towards the servants and said, "Well, let's see. Try you." Looking straight and coldly in the girl's eyes, the king said, naturally, she was very surprised at such a turn of events and asked, "What? I?" Carol continued to speak. "What did Lord Iton guilty of?" "Looking at the king," the girl thought. "A dagger, a bet, a drink, money, and a knight named Eden. Is this the plot of yesterday's short story?" The girl could not believe that she found herself in the novel that she read yesterday. She was an employee of a number of experience, with many years of experience, but her emotions dulled from sharp words of customers. She read the romantic stories that were the only joy in her life. The main character of the novel is the princess of a small country. She was brought as a concubine of the protagonist emperor. An uprising flashes in the climax of the novel, and the imperial palace does not withstand the onslaught. After that, the main character of the novel committed suicide right in front of the heroine. The princess did not believe what happened. She screamed not. The story ends sadly. The palace fell and the princess went crazy. The girl thought that if she got into the novel, then the man in front of her is the main character of the novel. Cardan Zeon is the ruler of the Hizrani Empire. His hair is black like a resin, a bloody iris. The ruler has a chiseled nose, like a chin, coated with a sculptor. The nature of a tyrant, mired in pleasures, and eliminated all advisors. That was the ruler. The ruler is cruel and ruthlessly punishes everyone who goes against him. He is so terrible, and at the same time so beautiful, that women cannot resist him. The girl recalls that reading the novel called him a beautiful villain. The girl could not believe what was happening and thought about it even more. Suddenly, the emperor made a tone of rude and asked if the girl was thinking about something else now. Naturally, the girl did not understand that she should answer the emperor and was a little confused. The emperor waited with anger and impatience, twisting a dagger in his hands, ready to strike. The girl understood that if now she did not give an answer that the emperor wants to hear, she could die. Therefore, she decided to agree with the emperor and said, "You are absolutely right, Your Highness." The emperor stared at the girl, but when he received the answer, he lowered his eyes. Then the emperor pulled a smile on his face and lowered the dagger. For the sake of winning the polo, he violated the rules and dared to take away the victory from His Majesty. The girl continued, "In the call center, it would be told to the emperor that the damage is not compensated. But now she considered the right man with a knife for an advantage." The expression of the emperor's face was strict and unperturbed, he thought. Suddenly, the emperor's face shone into a smile, and he said that only the girl understands him. The king asked if the death penalty will be worthy of punishment for the lord. At that moment, the girl thought that the emperor is not the same as those with whom she usually dealt. The girl understood that one of her words, and the knight could die. Therefore, she said that Eden really committed a serious crime. To begin with, she suggested that Eden experience pain for his deed, and the lord was shocked. The girl continued that Eden needs to be reduced from general guard to private. The girl thought that the loss of the post of general of the guard, deserved with great difficulty, would be worse for the lord. The emperor thought, but then replied that he would do so. The girl bowed and thought that everything ended well, and this somewhat reminiscent of work in the number of. The emperor said that his mood from the type of blood had deteriorated in the morning to earlier. The servants asked if it was possible to invite dancers from the south of the empire for the emperor. The emperor replied that he did not want to see the dancers and thought on. The servant proposed a masseur, but the emperor refused, and the servant said that there was no more to call. Suddenly, the emperor came a thought, and he turned into his shining smile to the servant. The emperor looked into the crowd and asked if no one is standing before him. The girl did not understand who the emperor was talking about, but she guessed that this person was clearly unlucky. The servants turned around and began to look at the girl intently. She was shocked. The girl until the last thought that the emperor was not turning to her. But alas, this was not so. After which the emperor called her Princess Irina Valoa, and the girl slowly stepped forward. The emperor looked at her intently and said that it was she who was the person he was talking about. At that very moment, the princess thought, "Why again I? Just do not contact him. If I contact the Kadan, then I will become a target for throwing daggers. I don't want to die." Therefore, she said that she would be happy to entertain the king, but doubted that she would satisfy his taste. The king did not expect such an answer, because before that everyone was drawn to him and performed his whims, so she thought. Finally, he said that he was confused from the answer, and he hears the refusal for the first time. The emperor suggested finishing the meeting, and the servants left the hall. The girl went out with the servants and stopped near the closed door of the hall. She exhaled in relief, rejoicing that she managed to get out of the hall so easily and avoid a deplorable fate. The girl thought, "Hooray, I survived." She was very proud of herself. Then, walking along the corridor, she thought, "It is generally humanly to move into someone's body during the meeting." She was just called Princess Valoa, and she thought, why would it? Stopping by the window, the girl thought about whether she was in her body. Looking at her reflection in glass windows, she realized that she had hit the body of that very princess. Irina Valoa, in the short story, was a villain, and although she rarely appeared, she often reassured the emperor. The girl thought that the duchess was very similar to her. He always smiles, even hearing unflattering words from customers. In the short story, Valoa opposed the order of the emperor for the main character to the greenhouse. After that, in the short story, she was executed for rebellion. The girl panicked. Why did she find himself in the body of the character who will die soon? She did not believe in what was happening, realizing that she could not just die. The girl remembered that in the short story, her heroine and the emperor rarely met, but only at work. Then why did the emperor say that she was the same person he was waiting for? The girl was thinking, is there really a secretive storyline in the short story, which she does not know about? Looking at her beautiful shoes, the girl decided that the information was not enough. Valoa decided to start finding out this world, and quickly ran to the open doors. The castle surrounded a huge yard, and a garden with many fountains, trees, and a large territory. The princess went out into the garden, and going examined around in search of something interesting. She saw the courtyard of the castle, stairs, fountains, lanterns, and trees. She was interested in everything around. The girl was amazed at the beauty around, and did not believe that it was really a world from fantasy. Suddenly, she saw a wounded knight, and thought, was it really the person whom she had seen earlier in the hall of the emperor? The knight walked next to two other knights, not noticing anyone around. Eden felt that they were watching them, and with a lateral vision saw a beautiful girl. Suddenly, the men bowed at the same time and said, "Your Excellency!" The girl thought it was Lord Eden, and he took off the general tunic because of her words. The knights continued to bow with Lord Eden, lowering their eyes. The girl thought that, although it was a hopeless situation, it was still inconvenient for her before the Lord. Suddenly Eden said, "Thank you, Your Grace." The girl was very surprised at his words. Eden continued that, if not for her, he would have already fallen at the hand of the emperor and did not talk to her now. He laid his hand on his heart and added that in non-payment duty to the princess. The girl was stunned. He took his position to which he went all his life, but he is grateful. She remembered that the Duke is a tyrant and kills for the slightest claims. For example, for a tasteless drink. The girl's eyes filled sad because of the memories of the Duke. She felt injustice. Eden was also sad because of what had happened, and was silent, his head bowed. The girl said that if he needs help, he could turn to her, and Eden was very surprised. His mouth opened in a slight smile, and from confusion from the words of the princess. Thinking a few moments, Eden said, "Thanks to the princess." After that, Eden with the knights went on, and the girl remained standing still thinking. Then she thought that Eden was not the character that appears only once and disappears. Suddenly, someone with a quick run began to approach the girl with words. "Princess Valoa, here you are." She turned around, not understanding what was happening and who was addressing her. She thought, "Your mightiness? Damn, it is me." And a maid appeared in front of her. The maid was looking for a duchess to try on an outfit for admission. The girl was surprised. An outfit for admission? The maid asked in bewilderment. Did she not ask her to prepare an outfit for the reception of the emperor and the monarchy spouses from Taraka? The princess was immediately stunned by such news. After all, she only moved to this body a couple of hours ago. She stood while the maid was crucified in front of her because she was recently in the call center, and now she went to the diplomatic reception. The maid asked about the problems, what the girl answered with a laugh. "No, no problems. You forgot everything," the king said. Valoa did not understand what he was talking about. Then he realized that he was betraying himself by behavior. Now is not the time to inspect the palace, Countess scolded herself. At any moment, an official reception will take place. Valoa asked the maid whether dinner began. She answered, "It remains half a day, and a suit with trousers is in the office." The maid froze in bewilderment, and the countess repeated aloud, "Another half a day, fine. Then you will not show where my office is." I gladly asked Valoa, a servant. Valoa blushed into her office, thinking, "This time I was able to get out. But where is the guarantee that I was lucky next time?" The girl began to quickly sort out the papers on her table, not understanding what was happening. She tried to find at least some clue, to survive with a tyrant who ruined the empire in 5 years. It seemed to the girl impossible, but she decided to pull herself together and deal with the princess's business. She has a personal space in the palace. In the original novel, the girl noticed a special attitude to Valoa. The countess understood that if she received useful information, it will be possible to avoid death at the hands of the possessor. Among the documents, the countess found on one of the sheets some strange code. Valoa did not believe that this is possible. The numbers on the sheet are an estimate of the expenses of the imperial family. The imperial family has almost no means of existence. The family is on the verge of ruin. The pigeon sitting in a cage watched the duchess and knocked with his beak. The bird wanted freedom. The duchess plunged into the thoughts of further actions and did not hear the poultry of the bird on the cage. She is waiting for the same fate as Princess Valoa. If, with such an empty treasury, the emperor will require the construction of another villa. The girl understood that in this situation, she would die faster than the princess, who was executed in the 1000th year from the founding of the empire. She was in despair, realizing that her experience in the call center is useless here. The countess did not believe. Is such an absurd death awaiting her? She didn't just want to come to terms with this. To survive, she must replenish the state treasury. Then the king will be pleased with his inconspicuous wealth. Surrender money for asylum and escape before the empire collapses. It was the perfect plan for Countess. The girl changed her clothes for a diplomatic meeting and decided to discard all doubts. To discard all doubts, it will bring to life all the dreams and desires of the tyrant and will become an indispensable servant. I decided Valoa for myself. Meanwhile, Carol and Queen Taraki arrived in the castle, a country located next to the Hisrani Empire. The king and Queen Taraki asked for a personal audience with your majesty. Therefore, they were very surprised by the appearance of Valoa. The girl was outraged by such a reaction of the guests to her appearance. She began to talk in high colors. The countess ran a hand over the table, looked at the dishes, and stated, "If she had not been here, who would taste the king's dishes?" The words of Valoa became a shock for the duke, and he was silent, being confused. The king and Queen Taraki were no less than the king are surprised by the response of the duchess. They did not meet this anywhere. The girl decided that her plan worked for everyone as it should, and smiled sweetly, feeling embarrassed. King Taraki was surprised and outraged by the reaction of the countess. "What is this reaction?" The girl clarified. "Didn't I say something? I thought that she was the faithful dog of Cardan. To protect yourself, dogs bark." The girl wanted to snap, but stopped in time. The countess asked, "Does King Tarak consider the poisoning of His Majesty insignificant, and whether he is ready to be responsible for his words?" The king of Taraka was afraid of the duke's reaction and began to make excuses that he did not mean this. The girl with sarcasm said, "Of course the king did not mean this. I thought, since they came to this, I decided to get a little." She laid her hand on her heart, leaning toward the king. This is what she has in mind. Allow Her Majesty to show respect for him, allowing her to check his food. The countess continued in bow. The duke was silent and pondered the offer of the countess. He considered Wallowa's proposal strange. He looked at the plate with food, thought about devotion, and told the girl that she could begin. The girl was surprised that the duke agreed to her offer. She did not expect consent. The king smiled, thought, and noticed. However, but he fell silent again, formulating the thought. Cardan continued to speak. "If the countess tastes dishes in which poison, this will still cause inconvenience," she thought. Amazing! She smiled from her thoughts and memories of what she knew from the plot. Until he became the emperor, he distinguished himself in conquering wars and was known as one of the best swordsmen. The girl began to eat the duke, thinking, poisoning threatens the Cardan only with a disorder of the stomach. For her, everything will end with an ambulance. The interior in the dining room was at the same time romantic and business. Paintings hung on the walls, and candelabra with candles were placed across the hall. The girl wiped her mouth with a napkin. She listened to her inner feelings, whether she becomes bad from food. King Taraka froze in anticipation. What will happen next with Countess Wallowa? What to do if she becomes bad? The girl got up and smiling said to the Cardan, "Everything is in order with his food. He can start a meal." The girl hid her hands behind her. She felt trembling from excitement in the whole situation that was happening. Valo mentally praised herself for work, but immediately pulled. She is squeezed like a lemon. It is unlikely that someone will want to poison a person whom the poison does not take. The girl doubted that food was dangerous. Having bowed, the girl said, "It is a great honor for her to be useful to your majesty." The duke said with a smile, "Thanks to her zealous work, he can now begin to start a meal without fears." However, the girl froze, waiting for a new instruction of the king. What will he come up with this time? The duke laid his hand on the table knife and tapped it with his finger. It looks like he was thinking what an indication to give the countess. King Taraka and the girl were surprised. It seemed to them that the duke would now throw a knife right at one of them. The duke noticed the expectation of Valoa and the king and continued, "Cut the steak is so tiring." The girl was in shock and understood that she needed to act immediately to satisfy the Cardan. The duke leaned back in an armchair, waiting for a chopped steak and watching the actions of the countess. The duke closely followed what was happening. When will his dish be in front of him? If the tyrant is momentarily not to please, it will die with a probability of 100%. In a hurry, the girl took the plate with food by King Taraka. Valoa turned to the guest, so that he forgave her and entered her position. The king was struck by behavior, and the countess was very ashamed. The steak in the plate of King Taraka was cut. The girl put a dish in front of the Cardan. The king noted, "The steak is perfectly cut. It is convenient to eat, but here, hot." The girl, standing behind the guests, realized that it was necessary to act further and guess the tyrant. She grabbed a fan from the queen's hands, who immediately froze in confusion. The girl screamed, so that the duchess immediately opened the windows so that the Duke would not be so hot. Valoa began actively waved a fan near the king, giving instructions. Open all the windows immediately. His Majesty is stuffy. The Duchess was silent, wondering what was happening. She wanted to take her fan from the Duchess. The King and Queen Taraka were upset by this technique, and the girl, on the contrary, was happy about her actions and continued to wave the fan. The girl with a smile and bowed. So better, Your Majesty? Are you comfortable now? The king answered strictly. From the fan carries disgusting spirits. He barely restrained himself so as not to blink his nose. Cardan ordered the girl, Stop, swing a fan. She stopped, pleased with herself. Valoa threw the fan out the window. The most reasonable solution is to throw it away. The countess stood by the open window and thought, It is necessary to get rid of everything that acts a tyrant on the nerves. Queen Taraka was shocked. The king asked her to sit down. The fan belonged to the deceased mother of the queen. The girl thought, how to get out of this situation? She was happy and embarrassed at the same time. The king viciously looked around. His gaze pierced the back of the countess and all those present. He stated, looking towards the statue that stood in the corner of the hall, That statue is too dazzling. The girl darted to the statue and said with complete confidence, Understood. I was about to move it out of place. She will move her right now. Valoa shouted to the queen, I will return to your problem as soon as I fulfill my duty. All those sitting at the table turned to the girl to see how she could cope. Not worth it, the king said. He added, The statue needs to be contemplated. It fits perfectly into the interior of the hall. However, the king noted, from the head of the statue, ripples in the eyes. The girl was shocked by his words. She is ashamed of her actions. She is unable to change something, reached a point of no return, to solve the problem without harming the beauty of the statue of an angel. With determination, she went to King Taraka and touched his head. She pulled the king's hair and took off her wig. The queen was horrified by what was happening. The countess went to the statue with the king's wig in her hands. She was ashamed to turn into guest. Wearing a wig on the statue, Waloa was able to cover the shining head. The statue looked unusual. King Taraka remained to sit bald and in complete shock. He did not expect someone to guess about his wig. Suddenly, the king folded his hands for applause. He began to applaud. Cardan noted, The angel has become even more beautiful. As expected, Princess Valoa has a sophisticated taste. The king leaned toward the girl and whispered, However, now there are other places that reflect the light. He hoped that they would be decorated. King Taraka in horror turned to the king and the duchess. He realized that we were talking about his bald head. The girl was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. The king's decrees drove her crazy. Meanwhile, a beautiful pink sunset has spread over the castle. A warm spring evening has come. King Taraka coughed and began to speak. As he previously reported in the letter, relations with neighboring countries are not stable. The king listened carefully to him, postponing food. But his appearance spoke of the opposite. The guest continued. Due to the heightened conflict in the border zone, a slight but still damage was caused. King Taraka, wrapping his head with a stream, asked, What is the opinion of Vage Majesty about what is happening? The girl believed that guests tolerate humiliation for the sake of proposal to Cardan to become an intermediary in the conflict. King Taraka told the king, Do not rush to answer. He hoped for the help of His Majesty. The guest continued, This question deserves attention. The kingdom of Esland borders on the empire of Hisronia. The girl thought, The kingdom of Esland is the country which will lead the empire to collapse. The king said after a long silence, The next spring will take place a banquet. The girl was surprised at his words. She thought he would answer the case. Cardan thought what to say next. Cardan continued, Organize a meeting there. Discuss in a friendly environment. The guests did not understand what he was talking about. A fruitful conversation will eliminate any misunderstanding, the king said with a grin. The girl, watching him, thought. I clung to one phrase. Banquet next spring. What to do? In the novel, it was called a grand banquet. It is not by chance that the Cardan will meet with the main character. Thoughts about the plot of the novels plunged the countess into shock. She got up from the table. The king noticed this and asked, Countess, something is wrong. He thought she felt bad from food. The girl, resting her hands on the table, said decisively. Number, she did not want to give a look that something else was bothering. As for the banquet, she wanted to note the foresight of the king. She will work in the sweat of her face so that the whole world finds out about him. The girl thought bitterly. From the moment of the Cardan meeting with the heroine, the countdown will begin to my execution. It should hold out until next spring. The countess decided to apologize to the king and Queen Taraka, and after the meeting caught up with them in the corridor of the palace. She handed the box with the queen's fan and the king of the king. She was very ashamed of her actions. The king looked angrily at the girl. He did not understand where she got these things. Take it! Valoa lowered her head and cried. A sense of shame took possession of it. The king put on his wig, and he and the queen moved to the exit of the castle. They heard in the back, I'm sorry. For random circumstances, I ruined such a valuable thing. She is very sorry that she disturbed your majesty. Because of her, Taraka can unite with Esland and declare war, so she is obliged to prevent it, forgetting about pride. The girl, using the working phrase, turned to the king and the queen. If you have concrete wishes, please tell. The king and the queen thought about the office of the countess. They did not think that she would cross through her pride. The guest said, If such a king's will has a question. The girl bowed. Ask anything. The king hesitated, but continued. There are thoughts about the expansion of our silk industry in Taraka. Vaola shone with the hope of saving the empire, and herself answered. Yes, Tarakansky silk is well known to her. It was he who was used every time to sew dresses, the main character of the novel. The countess asked, Why expand a prosperous business? The king answered, He understands how it will be painful for the emperor. The material is not very well known or verified. The king continued. The girl was shocked by such a statement. The expansion of production and strengthening of trade will make Taraka more, and will cause respect even to Island. He planned to supply goods at cost. The girl thought, This is brilliant. Valoa had eye-corned. This is a big catch. Thus, she can the treasury of the empire, and escape to its collapse. The girl grabbed the king by the hand and squeezed her in a strong handshake, concluding a deal. It will not be easy, but for our dear king, she will do everything possible. The guests thanked her and left the castle. Valoa decided that even if she was cut off with her eyes closed, comfort is above all. If you know the story of the novels, to manage events in the castle so easy. The evening fell to the castle. A little later, the girl in her office leafed through the notebook with the countess's affairs. Suddenly, someone entered the office and, closing the notebook, took it from the girl's hands. It was the king. Unfolding the notebook and looking at the records, he said, Work is still perfect. While the king was concentrated on papers, the countess thought that, although she knew the plot, does not know what to do. Valoa did not understand why Cardan came to her office, and shifting the papers folded by her all night. The king slyly looked at the girl. However, he began. After all, I did not just get through the papers. Cardan gently hit her head on her head. Valoa was in suspense, anticipating some kind of catch. The king suddenly turned around, as if he was about to leave, and asked, Why did she save the Lord's city? Cardan continued, It was the countess who gave him such an order to kill the Lord. His words shocked the girl. She could not believe that she could give such an order. I asked. First, the king continued. The dog with whom she managed moved to the Dowager Empress, so he had to be eliminated. Why the Empress appeared so early? She will show herself in the second part, when she transfers secret information to Island. Cardan told the Empress, Come up with a reason that will allow this situation, but do not help it again. The king said, Doesn't the girl think that he is running everywhere to fulfill her request? Cardan, touching her face, said, I am sure that Valoa will make the right decision, but she will also think about him. The king said, The more he watches the countess, the more he is convinced of her disgust, and the contract is too much. The girl was surprised by the words of the emperor. She recognized more and more new things. The plot was changed. The emperor spoke of a contract that was not in the short story, and the girl was perplexed. What is about? Valoa understood that this was important information, and this could help her implement the original plan. But now, from the contemptuous gaze of the Cardan, the head is empty like a clean sheet. Due to stupid numbness, her head can fly off her shoulders. She decides to bow and apologizes to the king. Now she will get rid of everything that annoys the cardan. She opens the window and stands on the windowsill to jump. The girl's thoughts were, "There is also a soft lawn. I won't die from the fall. I will get off with bruises. It is worth taking a chance." The girl jumps down with the thought that she would sacrifice herself to please the tyrant. Suddenly, the girl is enough for clothes at the last moment. This act is shocking Valoa. The girl lands on the floor in full shock. She hid a little from falling to the floor, but she remained alive and whole. The king answers, "Enough the contract first." His gaze is very harsh, and Valo's act did not surprise him, but only annoyed him. Cardan was going to please in the end, saying, "Then jump as much as you want." The girl decided to review old papers. According to Cardan, Princess Valoa entered into a contract with him. The princess possessed such a force that she could dispose of the Eden and keep the Dowager Empress under her control. The girl understood, if she is caught, that she is not a real participant in the contract. She learns about new types of execution. Based on papers on the table, she finds out more and more about Princess Valoa. The report under the codename Assistance to the Emperor contained information about all the movements of the Emperor. Now the girl understands why Cardan looked at her like that. All the same, the real tyrant is not him, but she. The knight sank to the castle. He hid many secrets about every hero of the novel, as if in confirmation of the hidden powerfulness of the princess. In the office, the girl found some strange objects. A book called The Leadership of Pigeons among working documents. In the drawer of the table with a double bottom, the girl found a portrait and a book about poisonous herbs. Judging because the portrait and the book were hidden, it seems somehow connected with the contract. Valoa thought. The girl looked at the portrait that she found, and the girl in the photo seemed very familiar to her. Why the girl in the portrait looks as if he had hung up anger at her. With these thoughts, Valoa threw a portrait to the floor. The girl blamed herself for her impulse of anger. To whom such thoughts will come to mind? A maid entered the office and said, "I apologize, princess. Your dinner." The maid set a table for one person and said, "Pleasant meal?" Exactly! The table setting seemed to the girl quite familiar. She saw her somewhere recently. The countess grabbed the book. The table is exactly the same as described in the book on feeding pigeons. On the table stood the main dish, a snack and dessert. Everything looked very tasty and appetizing. The girl was thinking about what was happening. She felt something wrong here. Why all this? The girl looked at the cages with pigeons and thought, still, the time of dinner. Can try to feed them. The countess decides to feed the pigeons, as described in the book. She handed the leaf of salad for a pigeon. He began to eat. 3 of 4 pigeons are given snacks, the main dish and dessert. The 4th is starving. The girl apologized to the 4 and promised to feed her next time. Valoa thought, we all have to work to earn our bread. Suddenly, the girl saw the pigeon one on the floor. Blood flowed from the beak. The bird was dying. The girl raised the bird. The unit immediately coughed with blood and fell. Valoa could not believe what was happening. The bird was dying in the arms of a girl. She lost her strength with every minute. The reason that Princess Valoa divided the food between the pigeons was to recognize the poison. In addition, a cough with blood and a sweet smell of salad. Everything is exactly as described in the book about poisonous plants. But even despite the fact that everything is described in the book in detail, there is no name for the poison itself, not the words about antidote. Even if there was an antidote, the only method of combating poison, adding it to food to develop stability. The princess tried to increase her resistance to poison, although she found a way. The small pigeon cannot do this. The girl was horrified to realize that there was nothing to help the unit. The princess chose a too cruel way to identify poison. She went to cells with pigeons. Sorry, regretfully said Valoa. There was a dead bird in her hands, and the girl promised to bury her in a sunny place. The girl looked at the dishes on the table and decided that she could not allow the birds to die further. The girl looked at the salad and understood. It remains to use the arena method, and she has no choice. Who wants to poison her? The emperor who has a disgust or the dowager empress? The girl decided to start with Eden, considering him a weak adversary, and went to his office. Such an expression on the face, as if the Lord does not understand why she is here. The princess expected another reaction. The Lord said he was getting used to his position. This is better than guillotine. The Countess thought he was pretending. Eden thanked the Duchess for his salvation and bowed. He sincerely did not understand why she came to him. The girl calmly turned away from the Lord and realized that he knew nothing. The marioner dog can go over to the side of the Dowager Empress, will then have to get rid of him. Valoa handed the basket to Edan with the words, "You have not yet recovered from wounds. You need to take care of your health." The Lord did not understand what the Countess is talking about. She took out a salad from the basket that had previously fed pigeons. The girl looked with a malicious grin at the Edan. In her head was a tricky plan for checking the Lord. She handed the plate to the Lord. After the maid found out about his work on the princess, he thought she would get rid of him. She saved him from the king and cares about his health. The Lord thanked the princess and will no longer repeat such a mistake. The girl thought, why the Duchess tried to kill her subordinate in this way. Eden decides to try the salad that the Duchess brought. Valoa is shocked by the naivety of the Lord. He will try it with pleasure. The Duchess is in shock why the poison does not affect the Lord. The girl looked angrily at the Eden and decided to take a plate from him. She rushed to him, trying to knock out a plate out of her hands. How it can be so easy to eat. She just rushed him in the garden nearby. "You are fine," the Lord said. "Excuse me." He was so happy, so he hurried to eat a salad. Eden said with a smile, "Now he is better. The main thing is not to forget carefully, chew." If he tried to poison her, he would not have so carelessly try the food that she brought him. The girl decided that Lord Iton was not guilty. She left the office and went out into the corridor, thought, who to check further? Only in vain spent time. If it was not Eton, then who wants to kill her? She thought. The girl began to think that perhaps Cardan planned this. But why is he so risk? Valoa is shocking her assumption. She cannot believe that Cardan is capable of this. At this time, the raven is watching the girl. She, thinking, goes to her office, deciding not to rush with conclusions. It is true that between Valoa and the emperor is a difficult relationship, but there are many other political opponents. The Countess begins dizziness. She does not understand what kind of dull is happening to her. She thought, do not be afraid to eat a little more, but you need to take into account immunity to poison and count your strength. It is impossible to fall right in the middle of the corridor, but she is still bad and dizzy. A Cardan manifests itself in front of Valoa. There is no choice, he says. But the girl does not hear his words. Valoa loses consciousness and falls directly into the hands of the Cardan. The king catches her. He does not understand why the Countess is bad. The girl comes to her senses for a moment, and seeing the king thinks, why is he here? Cardan holds a dagger in his hands and looks closely at the girl. He is silent and nothing says. She thinks if Cardan wants to kill her now, but he supports her by the waist so that Valoa does not fall. There is no one next to them. They are completely alone. Now the ideal moment is for the king to make the plan. The girl recalls that she saw a raven, and this is a sign of the omen of death. The king took the girl in his arms. She can go herself what he does. Why he took her in his arms. Cardan asks to behave calmer and not twitch. The girl thinks, one movement and she will end. The king carries a girl in her arms. The forces leave her, and the girl falls asleep right in his arms. Valoa woke up in her office. Her head was terribly ill. The king noticed. She quickly came to her senses. The girl noticed that she was in her office. She wanted to object to the king, but did not talk. The king realized that the Countess wanted to say, and answered the lead. That is, she wants to say that she should not be accompanied. This confidence, because she has not even woken up to the end. The king began eating salad. Cardan enjoyed the salad. It was evident that this dish was to his taste. The girl watched what was happening in shock. After all, there was poison in the salad. Why does he not act on him? Here is a psycho. Why is it? If you eat so much, it will be dangerous even for the best swordsman. Suddenly, the king stood up and threw the fork towards Valoa. Cheap taste. Cardan approached the girl and said, well, now that's enough to pretend. She did not understand what was happening. What does his look mean? Why does he look at me so viciously? Cardan knows about something or suspects the Countess. Does he really know about the method of Princess Valoa to develop immunity to poison? The girl could not understand what was in the king's thoughts. Earlier, the king was walking around the garden. It was night and the garden was empty. He was looking for an opportunity to enjoy silence. Suddenly, the raven flew up to the cardan and landed on his shoulder. This did not surprise the king. He was waiting for a bird. He asked for a bird. "You carefully watch Valoa." The bird croaked in response. The king saw that the bird was something like a letter in its beak. He ordered him to quit the bird, threw the letter to the ground. "What is it?" The king turned the letter with interest. He slowly read the contents. The Dowager Empress invited the princess to her palace. The letter turned out to be an invitation. The Dowager Princess was insidious, and the king ordered the crow to follow. Will Valoa accept the invitation of the princess? What a man in the past would not be Valoa? It is time to deal with her, the king thought. Valoa accepted the invitation of the princess and recovered to her castle. A lot of roses grew around. The castle was very beautiful. "Thank you for the invitation of your majesty," Valoa said. She put on her best outfit for an honorary visit. "Welcome, princess," the princess answered, who was sitting on the throne in her hall for receptions. She is so glad that the countess came. Valoa has not been to her palace for so long. The princess is glad to see her. This woman, Dowager Empress Hisronia, is Amelia Eslin. The girl remembered the plot of the novel. Not being the biological mother of Cardan, in the original, the Empress was not a key character. Valoa decided to reveal to Princess Amelia, despite her harmlessness. She decides to come up with a plan. Amelia got up to greet Valoa properly. The girl did not understand what the princess wanted to do. All fingers except the big is directed up. "Welcome, Eslin gesture." In the novel, this gesture was mentioned several times. The heroine, who extended her hand in Eselane, was immediately imprisoned. Suddenly, seeing this gesture live, Valoa fully realized that she had occupied someone else's body. The princess said she had prepared tea. The girl thought if she would try to send her a delightful aroma. The princess asked the countess, "Is it really so busy that it is so rare to visit?" Amelia apologized for tactlessness. She was frustrated by Valoa's refusals due to employment. The records said that the princess really constantly sent invitations to the princess. A servant approached the princess, and she instructed her ear. The girl thought that the woman looked suspicious. Valoa decides to check the princess's servant. Does she really want to get closer to the widow, or pretending? The countess said, "Come an empty hand with an empty hand. I have a gift for you." Irina said that Amelia did not refuse. It was tea from Merce's flowers. The princess noted, "Maurice is a special flower. Isn't it better for tea to use fragrant herbs? Flowers with a strong aroma are good," the countess noted, "but it prefers notes of mercury. Unlike roots, the flowers are not poisonous, and they can be eaten without fear." The countess noticed that the maid carefully helped her with the preparation of tea. The servant behaved strangely. It was evident that the girl was worried, afraid to do something wrong. Valoa noticed it. The princess noted that the maid is reliable, and the countess will be satisfied with her skills. The girl bowed embarrassedly. Valoa suspected the maid in poisoning, but decided not to interrogate her, fearing the leakage of the information. "Hurry up and fill the cup of the Dowager Empress." "The countess," said the maid. The girl took the kettle, but immediately knocked it on the table. All the tea was sprayed in different directions. The girl bowed and began to apologize. The countess was outraged not by the accuracy of the servants, it alerted her. The princess was worried. Is everything all right with Valoa? Whether the hot tea burned her? The countess reassured her. The tea has already cooled down. She was banging, but not injured. She was going to leave to change clothes for the upcoming meeting. The eldest maid behind the princess looked angrily at her subordinate, who poured tea. The girl bowed once again, apologizing. She poured tea by accident. Everyone looked after Valoa, and she felt their eyes with her back. Of course, they blame her in everything, the countess thought. She is sure that this princess bribed the maid to add poison to her. Why is it a princess? The girl thought. She called out and she turned around. The princess said, "If she has difficulties for the countess to come at any time, and did not trust the emperor, it is difficult for her to understand what the princess is thinking. Why the princess restrained her? Rather, she will die from poisoning than from execution." She decides to look after the Dowager Empress. The next day, at night, Valoa in the garden watched the cardan and servant of Amelia from behind the bushes. The girl did not understand what was happening. Why did the count come to the servant secretly in the garden? Cardan looked at the girl in love. He seemed to be going to kiss her. Is this not an empress who doused her with tea? Why is she alone with a cardan late at night? The girl could not understand what was happening around. Thoughts were confused in her head, and it seemed to her that she was going crazy. If you think about the girl from the portrait, which she found in the drawer of the table in her office, and this servant's are the same hair. Cardan preferred girls with chestnut hair. He was once not deprived of female attention. The countess thought that the cardan had similar preferences, but still what they do in the garden in the middle of the night together. Different thoughts arose in the countess's head. She continued to watch the strange pair of the king and the servants. What if it is a cardan tries to send it? What if it was he who ordered this girl to add poison into Valoa's food? The girl shuddered with her whole body. She could not believe what it was. The countess tore off the leaflet from the bush, because of which she followed and decided. She urgently needs to leave the palace. The next day, the count in his office, lying on the sofa, looked through different papers. The countess came in. She stated that she was going on a trip to find out how things are in the empire. The count answered, "Dare. The state core is empty every day, and it must find the reason for this." The count was as if read her thoughts. "Tell the truth. You are leaving for money." He believed that she was obsessed with money. Valoa noted, "The graph has insight. Does this mean that the treasury and her money too?" She wanted to run away now, but does not know the country and its orders at all. Therefore, I decided to leave this idea. It is better to calculate everything in advance. The king is worthy of exceptional luxury, inaccessible to other monarchs. During the trip, she will tell everyone and everyone how much the king does for the empire. The countess promised that, having a king, she would go down in history. Everyone will learn about his generosity. Cardan asked, "About generosity?" He did not understand what the countess was driving at. The girl noticed that the atmosphere in the hall changed and did not understand that she did not suit the king. Cardan stared at the girl. "It will be very good," he finally said. She was mistaken. He thought that the countess was mocking him. The girl strained. The girl must settle a misunderstanding before the king loses his temper. Cardan is already a fair ruler, but she wants to spread this opinion among his subjects. Cardan got up from the couch to approach Valoa. He did it very slowly and reluctantly. The king approached, and taking the chin to the chin. He looked intently into his eyes and said, "Go." The girl was glad of such a reaction of Cardan. She bowed in gratitude. The emperor continued, "If she wants, then let her do as she wants." The girl looked directly into the eyes of the emperor. She waited for him to tell her. Cardan came closer to let her go. Said, "Usually she does so, acting at her discretion." Cardan watched what was happening from the window of his office. Where the countess will recover, he did not know. He remembered yesterday's night in the garden with the servant of Princess Amelie. Then something distracted him, and he turned back. The girl noticed this and asked, "Is everything all right? Is the maid really tried to get rid of the princess?" The girl replied that she was ready for anything for the king. The girl looked at Cardan with devotion. It was evident that she was in love with him. He ordered to convey to the Dowager Empress that the life of the princess belongs to him. The prince thought alone. He wanted to follow the princess, but did not know how. Suddenly, behind the cardan, appeared his faithful servant, Raven. The king thought this was a good idea. The emperor released the bird out the window. I had previously instructed what to do a crow. Cardan was angry that Valoa let go. The raven flew right in the wake of the carriage. He flew quickly, but not high, to see well what was happening below. The countess left the carriage. She was met by the footman and helped to go out. The raven, meanwhile, caught up with them and watched from the sky. Valoa arrived in paradise. A huge farm with a garden and a mill was opened in front of her. The servant, the garden manager told, "Buzina grows here, that field of gooseberries." The countess noted that there are many berries. The guy was called Han Hill. He controlled the lands. The princess said that she had no complaints. She only expressed admiration. According to the reaction of Hanya, it is not difficult to imagine what was the princess, the evil right hand of the tyrant. The princess was amused with a rabbit. Valoa decided to change everything. She noted that Hani is very entrepreneurial, since he was able to master such barren lands. The baron answered, "He was just lucky." The princess said, "He can be proud of himself. He managed to grow a rich crop." Hanya was shocked by such a conversationalism and kindness of the princess. She usually behaves differently. The baron continued, "They want to plant blueberries this year. It turns out a very tasty jam from it is the same blueberry from the short story." The girl realized with surprise. Baron's speech attracted her attention. There were only a few scenes of food for the main character in the novel. In one of the scenes, the king was angry. The king's eyes burned with hatred. Really, because of some crop failure of the emperor, he will not be able to taste blueberries. Valoa was horrified by the memories of the fact that later, in the short story, the baron was executed due to the crop failure of the very blueberry. Hanya invited the countess to take strawberries with him on the road. He was so naive. He is completely a boy who has only berries on his mind. The girl decides to unite with the baron. The countess came up with a plan for how to save Baron Hania. When he leaves for the seedlings, let him in no hurry to return. The baron asked, "Why?" The girl thought but did not say, "You are executed next year." Valoa said that she was also going to go on a trip next year and suggested that the hero go together. The raven, meanwhile, watched what was happening. He was very invisible. No one saw him. He quickly flew towards the castle to report the news that he managed to hear. The king. The raven flew in and knocked on the beak in the window of the chambers where the cardin was. He heard a knock and opened the window. The bird quickly stumbled into the open window and sat on the table. Cardan was looking forward to the news. The raven retold to the king of the news. So between the baron and the princess are such conversations. Cardan summed up. He sent a raven for information, but he brought only gossip, and discussing travels at such a time seemed strange. Is the countess going on a trip with her lover? Cardan got up and went to the window throwing his mantle. Even if she decided to leave, it is necessary to comply with the contract. Cardan decides to follow her himself. Morning came in paradise. The sun shone brightly. The weather was pleasant. Hanya saw the princess in the courtyard, which gave instructions to the servant. The baron asked how she slept. The girl lied in a smile. She is the premise of grateful to baron for the concern of her person. In fact, all night she checked the consumable books of the paradise and did not close her eye. Lord Iton, who went with the princess, probably also did not sleep well, but looked like nothing had happened. How he could secretly follow the order to steal documents without even saying a word. Valoa looked after the lord and noticed that even for the baron it would not be easy. The lord felt the eyes of the countess and decided to come closer to her. He turned into a smile. The girl was taken by surprise. She did not expect Iton to approach her. The embarrassment covered her. What he creates, her heart goes into heels. She did not understand why she had such a reaction to the lord. The girl caught a strange smell in the air. He was very unpleasant. The girl realized that the river smells like that. Baron asked for forgiveness, saying that recently they had problems with the quality of water. The river was black. What happened to the river? Within the end of the Marquise of Sherrington, wastewater continues to enter. The baron continued that everything is in order, though prolific trees were wound next to the river. You need to solve the problem. She looked into Hanya's eyes. This is not normal. Are these trees not valuable for guests and for the baron himself? He is his servant, the prime minister of this state, and asked Hanya not to worry. Valoa will show the paradise a bright future with fruit trees. Meanwhile, the king reached the estate and watched with a raven on a tree for Valoa and Hanya. Cardan told the crow that he was mistaken. This is not love, it is just touching him. The king thought. If the princess fell in love, she would have a completely different expression on her face. He knew her gaze in love when she told him that it would help to become an outstanding ruler. Cardan thought that then was happening between the baron and the princess. What they planned if this is not love. Meanwhile, Valoa went to the Marquis Sherrington on a visit to solve the problem with the river near the Paradise Garden. Marquis Sherrington met the princess very honorable and said, so that she does not hesitate and proceed to the meal. They sat in a large dining room at a long table opposite each other. Near each there were many dishes. There are many different dishes on the table, but meat can be counted on the fingers, the princess noted. The marquis is dressed from a needle, and therefore his calculated books look very strange, Wallowa thought. The girl decides to catch the marquis on the hot and asks, "How are you with the estate lately?" Because of the crop failures, he is ashamed to collect taxes, but the countess noticed that everything was in order in the next estate. The answer was interested in the marquis. Does it really mean a paradise estate? There, fruit trees grow very well along the river. The girl decides to offer a deal to the marquis. What does he think about the monopolization of the berry business? The girl saw that the marquis was angry. We are talking about berry crops that require a lot of water, from where the harrow was given to get it, noticed the marquis. The marquis became furious. It cannot be that the baron uses water from its river. Did he really take the river into his own hands? She can solve the problem of Sherrington. Since the berry business flourishes thanks to his water, the profit is also it. The girl with a grin stated that in truth, she had one idea how to help both monarchs. The construction of the dam will be able to solve the problem of both lands, the princess said. The baron will not be able to grow berries on its land, and the marquis will achieve business prosperity thanks to the dam. She tells Sherrington to think well. The construction of the dam is too expensive, whether it can cover all expenses. The marquis was clearly embarrassed by such a statement by the princess and thought about the answer. Apparently, his treasury was not too complete. The imperial family will help financially if the marquis provides the necessary documents, tax returns, income certificates, a list of property, detailing of all transactions. The marquis brought all the documents of Wallowa. Now the territory is not the most favorable situation, the marquis said. Wallowa said, "Maybe this is because the marquis keeps money abroad, and this shocked it." Eton handed over the book of accounting, which he previously stole from the Sherrington safe. The marquis was surprised where the princess had this book. After all, she was in his safe. Huge foreign investments, the activities of an illegal gambling house, a profit transferred to Esland. What will happen to the marquis when the king learns about all this? Sherrington began to bow to Molia about mercy. She will cover all the expenses for construction, but he will have to pay tax debt, only half. In return, the countess wants the marquis to give her all funds transferred to Esland. Then she will bring everything to the end. With these words, the princess went to the carriage drawn by horses, went to travel further. Sitting in a carriage, the girl thought that she was replenishing the state treasury and collects money for her escape. She hoped that everything would also be smooth further. There was nothing to foresee trouble. Suddenly, the carriage was greatly brought, and the girl began to shake all over the carriage in different directions. She did not understand what was happening. The carriage stopped, and the servant said, "Further, the road is uneven, and it will be difficult to drive on a carriage." The countess asked, "There are also options for what you can drive," the servant said. "I brought you a horse. I chose the obedient. I hope you will like it," the servant continued. He crushed a brown horse. In appearance, she was obedient. She turned to the servant in indignation. Like her, a 21st century man should take a horse. Is there really no way? The servant continued that the countess has been riding since childhood. He has not seen her in the saddle for a long time. The countess thought, "Damn." Despite nothing, the girl deftly jumped into the horse's saddle. The horse did not understand what happened. The girl was surprised at her skills. Does she really have the muscle memory of the heroine of the novel? Not everything is so bad. Suddenly, the horse fell sharply and threw the princess up. Wallowa was frightened and grabbed tightly behind the horse's depth. The servants wanted to stop the horse, but it was too late. He rushed to the princess at high speed on the road further. The girl understood that something was wrong with the horse. She tried to stop her, but did not work. Someone gave a horse medicine. What to do to the princess? It was necessary to stop all this. Suddenly, a man in the mantle also appeared nearby on a horse. He tried to catch up with the princess's horse to stop. The man overtook the horse of the countess. He grabbed her by the reins, stopping. He understood that Wallowa could die. The man asked, "You are fine. Do not let go of the reins, no matter how scary." He got down from his horse and gave a hand to the countess so that she safely got off the horse. A raven sitting on a tree branch, the faithful servant of Cardan. He watched the dressed king and countess. Valoa told the stranger. Thanks to you, I remained alive. Could you introduce myself? There is no gratitude, the stranger said. I passed by, saw that you had problems, and decided to help. Cardan handed a piece of bloodied glass to the countess. It was he who caused an accident. The countess took the glass in her hand and thought, this is not an accident. Someone tried to kill her. Meanwhile, the servants ripened with screams. They worried about Valoa and for the fact that they could not stop the horse. The princess answered, pointing to the stranger. Thanks to this person, everything is in order with me. The servants wanted to take the blame on themselves. The princess said, no one is to blame. The horse did not listen to her. The girl showed a fragment of bloodied glass Cardan. He was shocked. Cardan took off his jacket and threw Valoa over his shoulders. He suggested spreading the camp. After short thoughts, the girl agreed. Today, everyone needs to rest. Looking at the fragment in the tent, the countess noticed. It is cut to attach to the saddle. Someone from the near environment wants to kill her. Who acts according to its graphics? But who? Sitting in pitch darkness, the countess thought. She ran away from the killer from the royal family. It seems to be in vain. The countess thought all night. In the morning, the pigeons in her cells rummaged, but she never found the answer. The girl went to the cells to see why the pigeons were rummaged. Suddenly, Valoa saw that someone was approaching her. She was very scared. It was Lord Iton in his hands. He held his sword and waved to strike. The countess dodged the blow and asked, What's happening? She was very angry. Outside, she found that there was no one nearby and began to run in search of help. The lord caught up with her and put his sword to her throat. He wanted to kill the countess. Valoa, coughing in her eyes, was hatred and bewilderment. She had no fear, the girl thought. Princess Valoa acted correctly. Instead of sympathy, she should have trusted her decisions. The countess survived so many attacks in the short story. Lord Iton had to die even earlier. If she were smarter and acted with caution, like a princess, could not allow such a situation. Suddenly, a stranger appeared in the mantle and hit the Lord Outno with his foot right in the face. This was a surprise to the countess. The stranger took out his dagger and wanted to strike Lord. He wanted to kill Outno that he did not harm Valoa. The Lord grabbed the stranger's hand and defended himself with his last strength to dodge the blow. Men were preparing for a bloody battle, and the countess sat on the floor and was discouraged from what was happening. The Lord made a decision, continue to fight, surrender or run. A plan was brewing in his head. Iton decided to run as quickly as possible. The stranger wanted to bring the battle to the end and catch up with the Lord. Valoa grabbed the stranger by the mantle. It's so easy for him to go through the mountains. Most likely he ran to the wagon. Her throat hurt from the grasp. She forgave not to kill him, because she needs to find out something. In the garden, the stranger caught up with Itnon. The Lord stunned the whole guard. He is an unusual person. It is worth being careful. Iton kneeling in front of Valoa. She now realized why no one came to the rescue. She wanted to tear out all his gray hair. But first you need to find out something. The Lord stood, his head bowed, motionless. The countess resolutely began to one knee in front of the Lord and asked, why did he do this to her? She, like no one, knew that he was not capable of this. Who ordered him to kill her? The Lord was silent. Valoa will have to hand him over to the court as a criminal if he does not receive an answer. Iton said, I'm sorry. He was ashamed of his act, but he did not give out the customer of the murder. The guards took him. Only a stranger and countess remained on the garden. They escorted the results with a look. The stranger said, thinking about the future, it would be worth killing him now. Valoa looked at him in surprise. She thought that the stranger was right. But in order not to happen, she does not want to kill people of her own free will. The girl bowed and thanked the stranger. Thank you for saving me twice. Your Majesty. She recognized him immediately, but admitted only now. Cardan looked inquiringly. He was very surprised at the recognition of Valoa. She bowed in front of him in curtsy. Cardan said with a malicious smile, as I thought about her, nothing is impossible to hide. Valoa continued, I will never forget that you saved me twice. She was sincerely grateful to Cardan. Cardan asked to leave gratitude to himself. If not for the contract, he would leave her to die. Valoa laughed and said, You are an example for those how to follow the terms of the contract. The king did everything he could and was going to leave. The girl got angry that he could not leave like that. Valois said, "Why don't the Cardans spend the night here, and tomorrow will not hit the road? If she dies, the contract will be violated." It turns out the king went there in vain and back behind her. Cardan was very surprised by the words of Valois. She found him by surprise. The king was going with his thoughts. Does the princess ask him to stay with her? The princess grabbed the king by the mantle, preventing him from leaving. If she knew that the king would come, she prepared a better tent. They went inside. Valois invited the king to use her bed. He answered perspicaciously, and so gathered. The girl thought, where can she spend the night this night? Because the bed will be busy. The king began to take off his outfit. He was preparing for bedtime to quickly go on the way tomorrow. The countess was surprised that Cardan began to change clothes in her presence. She was very embarrassed. She remembered that the king was never deprived of female attention. There were always many women around him. Valois decides to sleep on the floor. Carol answered, "As you wish." He did not care. She was very frozen. The king is just a statue with a bad character, but her act can be considered by disgust. She doesn't care. Valois sat on the floor in clothes wrapped in a blanket. She did not understand why it was so cold. This is generally normal. The girl looked at the Cardan with envy, who went to bed in a warm bed. He is that lucky. The countess sorted out the blankets to hide another. Carol did not pay any attention to her actions. Carol made a remark to the countess. She will be too swarming. The girl asked for forgiveness for the noise. Cardan embarrassedly approached Valois. They don't have to apologize. The girl did not understand why he would not go to bed. He pulled her hand greatly. She did not understand why he was pulling her and where. Does he really want her to sleep on the bed? The girl fell from such power. She hit and still did not understand what the king was doing. Cardan said evil. "I do not want to listen to your sighs, so let's sleep calmly in bed." Valois said, "How she can take his place? Suddenly he will get sick." Cardan noted, "Countess is very cheerful pronouncing this." The girl still doubted the correctness of her act. Maybe she still should lie on the floor. Cardan said, "If she is so worried about him, they should lie together on the bed." The girl was very surprised that Cardan himself made such a decision. She did not believe her ears. The king continued, "The bed is wide, especially since the countess is so worried about him. She seems to be upset if he does not lie down next to her." He approached, going to lie next to the countess. The girl was indignant. Cardan said, "If she still wants to go to bed on the floor, he will not hold her." The countess weighed in her head on a bowl of scales, which is more important than the lack of cold or comfort. She will only bother him tonight. They lay down their backs to their backs. The girl still could not believe in the reality of what was happening. In any case, it seems she lost. How can you fall asleep in such a situation? Morning came, and the sun brightly illuminated the tent in which Cardan and Valois were sleeping. Cardan woke up. He was heated and then looked around, not understanding who was next to him. The head is on his shoulder. The countess lay on his shoulder, in an embrace with him. He thought how this could happen. In a dream, the girl called the Cardan a warm, good stove. Apparently, she dreamed of a house. Cardan carefully looked at the girl and thought, what to do next to him? She would not help Baron from whom there would be no benefit, and would not be at enmity with the Marquis Sherrington. Cardan thought, Valois would not behave like that. What did this countess plan? There was no clue. Cardan was very angry, and Evil grabbed Valois by the hand. Meanwhile, a letter from Marquis Sherrington came to the castle of the Dowager Empress. The letter said, "The Marquis is going to transfer all the accumulated money of shadow funds to Countess Valois." The countess read a letter with a laugh. Valois told her that she loved money to madness. The maid asked, "Submit to the Marquise so that it does not transfer the money." The countess answered, "There is no way out, let him do as he knows." The countess asked, "Where Valois goes on?" "In the estate of Margraf Hespen. There are just their people. Let the maid convey them to prepare for the countess." The countess asked, "Cardan has not returned yet." The servant answered, "He said that he would have fun in more remote areas." How the king could leave the capital? Is there really no women in the kingdom? How such a mound could lead the capital? If her son were alive, of all this would not be. The countess remembered her son with longing. When the girl woke up, the cardan was not nearby. The rays of the sun illuminated her bed. The girl sat down and thought, everything is right. If he was nearby, she could not have enough sleep so well. She began to call pigeons for breakfast. She gave them grains, not a salad with poison. Valoa noted that it is so tasty to have breakfast, and she and pigeons can only now, while they are on a trip. A cardan entered the tent and said, she was able to drag pigeons even into such cold edges. They are constantly together, and she became attached to the birds. Just in case, the heater grabbed. Cardan angrily remembered the morning dream of Valoa. Of course they are a heater. He gripped his teeth. The king said. As they agreed, he stayed here until the morning and is now serving and went out. The girl was surprised. Where is this? The king is in a hurry. Why such a hurry? Meanwhile, Cardan went to the local bar. Everyone drank beer and rustled. The king drank a mug of beer in one gulp. The people around were delighted. The men noted that he knows a lot about drinking. Cardan replied that he had not yet begun. Girl cook went to the cardan. She has never seen him. What fate is he in their area? Looking for beautiful ladies. Capital women have already bored him. The girl thought it was a joke. She decided to offer Cardan to spend the night with her. Cardan did not expect such an offer. Cardan turned around and noticed that the person in the mantle was watching him. The king answered, only for honor to spend the night with such a wonderful stranger. His face shone into a smile. The girl slept on the bed in the hotel bedroom. She enjoyed the dream. The dream was strong. Cardan sat on the bed and could not catch his breath. Finally, she was cast from him. The king decided that the man who followed him was a servant of the Dowager Empress. He returned to her. His head was terribly hurt from what was happening. Too many events, you need to consider your actions. How long did he need to behave like that? How much more the contract will operate? Meanwhile, Lord Iton escaped, and the guards guarding him were injured and asked for forgiveness from Valoa. The countess saw a pillar and a ragged chain to which the lord was chained. There was a lot of blood around. The lord is skilled and the guards were useless before him. It can organize a search detachment. The guards were trembling with pain and cold. They were weak. Valoa decided that it was not worth looking for results. Although the king was wounded from contractions with the results, they managed to keep him. The essence of Countess Valoa told the girl what would happen. It was necessary to kill Outno. The countess gave the order to postpone the persecution of the lord and first engage in the wounded. They went to the village, and the servants settled her in a dilapidated inn. The countess suited this. The servants knelt before Valoa. They wanted to continue the service, and this outraged it. Why did they behave like that? And if the wounds are hung up, you need to relax and recover. They missed the killer, why she gives them the opportunity to heal their wounds. Perhaps for the future offensive. The girl must maintain her authority as princesses and answer the servants. We'll punish them upon returning to the palace, having made the evil appearance of Valoa, told the servants. From now on, there should be no such mistakes. Suddenly, the zeal and sincerity of the guard will soften her, and she will forget about this situation. The countess thought with a smile. Therefore, let the guard does not hang out in vain, but focus on treatment. The servants were surprised by the indication. The servant said, the princess's room is located on the second floor, at the end of the corridor in the inn. The girl thought, as I go, I'll be silent and fall asleep. Today's events tired her. Going behind the servant, the princess thought. Of course, it is noisy because of the tavern on the ground floor, but this is better than the tent. A cardan ran out into the corridor in a towel. He screamed. The water is ice, and he wanted to wash in hot water. Valoa met with the king. Is he really here too? Why? The servant was also surprised by this behavior. Cardan was shocked by an unexpected meeting with the countess. He was wet, and drops flowed across his body. The servant said, now he will bring hot water. Cardan called to the princess. The girl answered calmly. His Majesty did not expect to meet here. They collided again. The doors to the room of the cardan were open, and the girl was sleeping on the bed. Valoa noticed this, and he began to make excuses. The countess realized that this was a common thing for him. He does not change his tastes. Girl with brown hair. The king continued to speak. The girl is just sleeping. Valoa answered. He is very experienced. It was angry with him. Cardan attacked the girl. He adapts to her stupid performance so that she should not understand him. Cardan's words were very surprised by the girl. I mean, he adapts to her performance. What is about? Is it really the terms of the contract? It is necessary to finish the conversation. Otherwise, he will understand that she does not know about the contract. It's time to go to bed. In addition, the king is wet and can get sick if they continue the conversation. The king is contemptuous to look at Vaol, he said. She does not believe him. She thinks that he will abandon Eleanor like any other. He stared the countess in the eye. Does this tyrant change women like gloves? Only because of her alone. Does Cardan go along the string only before Princess Valoa? The girl thought in surprise. The king stared the girl in the face and was silent. He did not know what to say. Why does he justify her as a fool? She still does not believe him. Cardan went into the room but did not close the door. Valoa looked after him. The king said, I forgive forgiveness. The bed in my room is already busy. If Valoa wants to lie down nearby, like yesterday. This was very angry with the princess. She slammed the door and thought. How long she had no bed. The girl fiercely tried to recall the details of yesterday evening. Still, it was normal. Really, something happened. Cardan was sitting in a room on the bed next to the sleeping Countess Valoa. He thought. Suddenly, Cardan saw that a raven had arrived at him and kept a letter in his beak. The letter said, Many wounded servants. Eton escaped and Valoa deviated from the course. Cardan could not believe. He made so much effort to catch the lord, and he was so simply missed. The king did not know why Valoa helped wounded servants. The girl woke up. She was cold. The girl again dreamed of a fireplace, and she asked in a dream why the Cardan left her. Cardan thought about the letter and words of the girl. He did not like it more and more. Valoa arrived in the county of Hespen after some time. There was winter outside and snow fell. Count Hespen was happy to meet with Countess Valoa. Rado greeted her. The king was with her in his mantle. The count invited Valoa and go to the castle. Cardan noticed that everyone has bandaged wrists. The girl turned around surprised. He talked about the knights. They missed the killer, and it is surprising that their arms and legs are still intact. Valoa said, They are still useful, and she will keep them with her. Cardan answered maliciously, I did not know that the princess was so merciful. He knew her other. The count heard a conversation between the Cardan and Valoa, and was alert. The girl picked up words for an answer. Hesben said, So that the servant does not work out to be the busy person, but took the princess's horse to the stable. The count was very outraged by the behavior of the guy. Valoa did not understand what he was talking about. Valoa noticed Cardan's gaze. Margraf was waiting for the death penalty, but who would guard the borders? She will take her horse herself. The Margraf insisted that she leave it to the servants. The girl said, The servant here, she herself, will take her beautiful horse. She will be so calmer. Hesbon looked suspiciously at Valoa. If she really wants, let her take. The countess followed the Margraf and turned around, told Cardan to follow her. He silently watched what was happening. It was cold inside. This building was built as a fortress, so here it is colder than in other castles. Hesben said, referring to Cardan, The hostess is cold, but he cannot give her his clothes. The girl answered, Everything is fine. Why is the Margraf finding himself a Cardan? He crossed the line so many times. The girl noticed. The fortress is so spacious. Why there are no servants at all? Hesben was very surprised. He loves silence, therefore reduced the number of servants. The girl was wary of such a statement. Hesbon looks like a person who hates telephone conversations and thinks to call support. As a prime minister, she came to study the difficulties of each possession. He can tell her that he is bothering him. Throughout the generation, counts of Hespen do everything they should, but all the possessions had some problems. Haney's possession had a problem with water. Sherrington had a lot of money problems. Is it really so easy to manage the ownership? Hesben strained and was silent. Hesben said, There was one problem. For a year now, the inhabitants of possession have been continuing to disappear. Valoa was surprised. He means moving. In what sense people disappear? People seem to be abducted. Last month, the number of missing reached hundreds. The countess was in complete shock. Is it really all these events with disappeared people? This is the beginning of history. In this story, slave traders secretly abducted people. With the connivance of the tyrant, the slave trade grew. The resident raised a rebellion. The girl did not think that now she would face this story. She will solve this problem. The count was surprised. Is the princess herself investigating this matter? The princess answered, of course, because his task is to protect the boundaries. The closer the collapse of the empire, the shorter her life. She needs to delay the original plot of history to delay time. The husband table was wrecked with various dishes. He ordered the princess the best alcohol. Valoa asked, is it normal to drink in the middle of the day? She was surprised by the behavior of Margraf. The count asked her not to refuse. Today is a wonderful day. The princess said she did not agree to drink. The husband understood his mistake, and that he hurried to the proposal of alcohol for Valoa. The count turned to Cardan and ordered him to come to drink from the princess to drink. Cardan was at a loss. It is more pleasant when a handsome guy pours alcohol than an old man. Nice, but terribly scary. If the princess wants him to take care of her, Valoa said. There was a misunderstanding. Why the guy does not take off the outerwear in the room? The husband asked. This person looks better in outerwear. The girl answered. Cardan was silent. The count continued. This is wrong. The girl mentally asked him to shut up. She got up and screamed. She has a fetish on the jawline, and she asked the guy to be in clothes. All maids and servants, like Hespen himself, were very surprised by such a recognition. The count understood. An awkward pause came. Vala was very embarrassing and awkward. She wanted to die. The count asked the Cardan to introduce it. He did not lag behind the king. Cardan took the bottle in his hands and answered. His surname, Rowania. He did not know what to come up with. The girl watched how the Cardan lied and did not understand why he was doing this. What is the name? The count asked. Nan Rowania answered Cardan. The girl laughed to herself. She remembered how she slept on the king's shoulder. These memories were horrified by the girl. While the guy poured wine, Hesben thought, what is his unusual name? What does it mean? The king handed the glass of Waloa and said, if his name is so unique, hoping that they will not forget him. Cardan smiled. It was clear that he played along with the girl and hoped to her game in response. The girl smiled back. She understood. They will continue their game further. She grabbed a glass and drank wine in one gulp. Everyone was surprised by this behavior of the princess. The heart jumped out. The glass was empty, and she was a step away from the death penalty. The taste of wine seemed to the countess very familiar. Where did she try it? Suddenly, drops of blood began to fall on the table. In a few seconds, a puddle formed. Cardan looked at Waloa with horror. His heart froze. Is it really her blood? The girl's lips were in the blood. Blood flowed right on the table. She was poisoned with wine. The girl saw her bloodied fingers and a pool of blood on the table. She lost her strength. Cardan shouted and rushed to the aid of the countess. He was very scared for her life. The king shouted, food is poisoned. The count was horrified. Is the countess dead? The guy looked angrily. Shut up and find a doctor with an antipyretic. Interrogate all the servants in the fortress. If Hesben does not want to be accused of murder, he must find a criminal. The count was surprised. He gave the order to lock the gate and call everyone who touched the blame. Cardan took Valoa in his hands and carried it to the room. The king understood that his actions violated the contract, but he did not have a way out. He must save her. The girl was unconscious. She has not yet fulfilled the entire part of the contract. She must live. He put the girl on the bed. She needs urgent help. He was a vampire. Cardan decided that his blood could alleviate the symptoms of poisoning and save Valoa. He decides to kiss her to save her life. Their lips are approaching closer in a kiss. Cardan has blood in his mouth. She can help the countess. He kisses her on the lips, hoping for healing. The king leaned over the bed of an unconscious countess. He is waiting for healing. The girl does not begin to come to her senses. Her eyelids and lips begin to move. Let him only try to die. Her body will not be buried in the temple, but rot as a corpse of a criminal. The doctor entered the room. He was looking for a medicine to help Countess remove poison from the body. With regret in his voice, the doctor seemed. There is no hope. He was afraid to speak such words in hearing. The Countess took a deadly dose of mercury, so there is no chance of restoration. The doctor continued with bitterness in his voice. It is worth preparing for the worst. Cardan was angry from the helplessness of the doctor and drove him away. He knows better than anyone how difficult the fate of the princess is. Cardan went to the bed of a sleeping countess. Valoa was still unconscious. Cardan took her by the shoulders and leaned over. "Do not stupid and wake up." Cardan believed in the best outcome. "You just need a little time to recover." The whole shirt of the girl was stained with wine and blood. It was necessary to change her into clean clothes. Cardan began to walk around the room in search. Clean clothes should be somewhere here. Suddenly, the king's attention attracted a suitcase. He stood aside, as if he was unnecessary and was going to throw him out. Cardan decided to open a suitcase. Perhaps it is there that there is clean clothes for the countess. He was very surprised to see the contents of the suitcase. There were no clothes inside. There were many different papers inside. Why are they lying here? What kind of paper it is? The morning came the next day. The sun illuminated the whole room in which the countess slept. She woke up. The head was terribly sick. There was a strong weakness. The girl did not understand where she was and what happened. Cardan saw that the countess woke up and went to her to see how she feels. The king stared at the girl. In his hands he held a photo frame. He wanted to talk with Valoa. Why does he hold it in his hands? What kind of portrait is this, and what Cardan wants to talk about? It was again a portrait with that girl. How he found himself at the Cardan. It seemed to her that the portrait was related to the contract, so she took it from the office and hid it in the suitcase. Cardan angrily asked, "Why the portrait is at Valoa?" He was angry with such an act of the princess. The girl understands. You need to answer something, otherwise awaits the death penalty. Eleanor. Valoa wanted to keep the memory of her. The girl lied. The king approached. He did not believe the words of the countess. "You say I wanted to keep the memory of Eleanor. Then let him tell you what kind of person this girl was." Valoa was in a stupor. "The maid of the Dowager Empress, and the main character of the work. Beloved of your majesty," Valoa answered. Cardan handed the portrait to the countess. She told the truth, but it looks like she lost her memory. Now it makes no sense to ask questions. Cardan said that the countess was resting and decided to leave. He went out into the corridor and thought about the words of the countess. Eleanor is his beloved. Cardan pondered these words. The king assumed that the princess was not in himself. Why did she decide so? Eleanor is not his love. She helped the objectionable Baron of Paradise land to restore good water to the estate. Despite the actions of the Lord saved his life. Although it was necessary to kill him, she did not punish the knight who missed the Lord's city lord. She was strange, like her actions. She behaved like a man who had lost her memory. Probably this is actually. If she does not remember Eleanor, then the terms of the contract are also not aware. Cardan thought. Perhaps this is the last chance to return his mother now. The girl in the photo was actually the mother of the king. Hesbon entered the room to the countess. He was very glad that she came to her senses and everything ended well. He was worried when the doctor said that Valoa would not recover. She herself did not believe that she could survive after that. This is probably due to the method for the dosage of poison from Princess Valoa. All the same, she was an amazing person, Hesbon said. Perhaps she will not believe him, but he is not at all involved in poisoning. He was worried not for her, but for himself. The girl did not want to mess with the manners anymore and answered briefly, "I know." The count was very surprised that the princess believed him. What happened to those who had access to guilt? The countess asked. They are all in the dungeon, the husband answered. The countess answered, no need to punish them and look for the guilty of poisoning. Hesbon was amazed at such a statement. How then to catch the culprit of the poisoning of the princess? The count was perplexed. The princess said with a smile, distribute false information. She had a plan. The column needs to inform everyone that the Princess Valoa is dead. She wanted to know what a reaction to such news will be. The castle began to discuss the news of the death of the princess. The dose of the poison she accepted is twice the deadly. Valoa eavesdropped on the conversation of the maids from behind the doors. But everything broke off in the most interesting place. The princess lives in a room in the attic to hide that she is alive. She is bored and food so-so. It is strange why Caradan has not been since yesterday. Did he know that the countess does not know about the contract? While the princess was thinking about yesterday's conversation about Eleanor, a cardan entered the room. In his hands, he held a tray of food. I was surprised that she was so cheerful and feels good. He served soup with bread and ordered to eat if she feels much better. The countess began food. Cardan looks like there was nothing yesterday. Cardan was indignant. Why the princess does not eat food that he brought? He said sarcasm. She is a dog. The girl with a smile on her face began to eat. The words of the king laughed her. He is, as always. In the middle of the night, Cardan entered the room and began to wake the countess. He said that you need to go. Why is he here? Why you can't do it during the day? If a person who was considered the deceased for a walk, it would have amused everyone. The girl trembled with the cold. She was very frozen. Where does he lead her into such a cold? He grabbed a plush vedmaid who was lying in the corridor and handed Walloa. Throw at least it. Why tear off everything that comes to hand? The countess did not understand how to wear it. I put it on my head and was outraged. Cardan suddenly said, "Quiet!" They froze in the corridor near the doors. Someone was outside. They opened the doors and saw a butler who carried a cage with a dove. This is the culprit of the crime. An elderly butler that was next to the Margraf at dinner. The girl rather wanted to catch him. Cardan grabbed her hand. How can they catch up with him down the stairs? What should they do? You need to rather catch up with the criminal and find out everything. Why did he do it with her? Suddenly, the king grabbed her in his arms and went down the railing of the stairs at high speed. The girl was scared. Going down, they saw that the servant was running deep into the forest with a cage. They began to catch up with him. "Who are you?" the countess screamed. Devils ranging. She was very angry that her dove was kidnapped. The servant turned around and began to run away even faster. He saw that a chase had arisen behind him. Suddenly, the old man saw a huge vedmead in front of him. He completely blocked the path, and the servant froze with fear. They caught the servant, and he said in the count's office. This was all arranged by the count. The count beat him. How he dares to lie. Husband said, "This is all slander. He never tried to harm the princess." The servant slanders him. If this was conceived by the count, why he sent a dove with information about death? They are all in the same castle. To pass it to personally faster. The servant said that the count is in collusion with a senior nobleman from the capital. He handed them all away. They began to sort things out to the princess. It was clear that they were both in conspiracy. Dog showdowns. The doors swung open, and a cardan with papers in his hands entered the office. "What a vile noise," he asked. "The search for the room is completed. Walls and fake boxes." The count and servant tried their best to hide their crimes. She already heard this fragrance somewhere. In addition to all doubts, the Dowager Empress is worth it. Meanwhile, the ball was taking place in the main hall of the Imperial Palace. Many honored guests arrived. Everyone discussed the news of the death of Princess Valoa. There were rumors that she had been poisoned. The noblewoman who drank the wine left this world because of him. The crowd was buzzing. They could not calm down. A cardan entered the hall and asked the guests that they are so enthusiastic discussing. The guests turned out in surprise. They did not expect the king to come. He was waiting for the answer to his question. One of the guests said, "They discussed the morning news of the death of Princess Valoa." The king thought, "The news of death. This is different about the information that he knows. It is worth asking a person straight about such things." He turned to the door and called the princess. The princess stood behind the doors and waited for the king to call her to look at the reaction of the guests. The guests were amazed at what they saw and what was happening. They did not believe that Princess Valoa was alive and entered the banquet hall. The princess bowed to those present. "Your Majesty is undoubtedly right. She herself will answer all the questions." The guests were surprised, as the princess all the same turned out to be here. They were waiting for an explanation. The king continued to play along with the princess. How many years, how many winters they have not seen. How her journey passed. Valoa continued to play along. Thanks to the mercy of the king, everything ended very well. Wherever she came, the subjects praised the king and could not hide joy. But she ran into difficulties. What were these difficulties? Cardan asked slyly. Because he knew everything himself, the girl said confidently. Someone tried to send her. She thought that the killer is somewhere here. To poison means, who would dare to commit such a crime over the Countess himself? Cardan said. The girl waved her hand. This happened to her in the Hesban County. A count with a servant and a cage with a dove entered the hall. They lowered their heads with shame. So she accuses the count, a simple nobleman who protects her bird. The crowd spoke. People thought perhaps the princess offended something while she was in county. Sherrington cried out from the crowd, "Your Majesty, this is outrageous! The attempt on the life of the Prime Minister of the Empire, to chop off the guilty head." Cardan thought, really for a long time, there were no executions. Hesban shouted that he was innocent. The count was looking for support from the princess. Valois answered, "The count is really not guilty of sending." The poison poured his butler. If the count had plotted the murder, he would not use subordinates. The butler contacted the instigator of the murder with the help of a dove. The girl showed a cage. When the butler found out about her death, he immediately sent a message. Everyone believed in the death of the princess. The guests said that they learned the news only yesterday. That's right when they received an official letter. The princess continued looking at Sherrington. The letter did not indicate that she was poisoned with wine. How did he find out? The Marquise was outraged. Why, everyone is looking at him. Is he really suspected of poisoning Princess Valois? The crowd began to say that Sherrington was the first to talk about wine poisoning, so he was the first to launch this hearing. Everyone is now suspected of him. This is due to the fact that he was then upset, the princess said. Marquise is right. His words are not proof, but this can prove the pigeon. She opened the cage. The pigeons fluttered. Those who sent a message about poisoning was the princess. Sherrington dismissed the birds. Before letting go of the dove, she used indelible ink on it and in a letter. Valois asked Marquis Sherrington to remove her gloves. He was perplexed what was happening. The Marquise realized that he was opened. He began to scream and tried to attack the princess. Sherrington shouted, "Princess is to blame for everything. She herself is to blame for everything," and approached her. The king understood the desire of the Marquis and hit him on the floor with a blow. It will be bad if he breaks the princess's head. The king realized that the princess was right. The glove fell with the hands of the Marquis of Sherrington. His hands were stained with poison. He was the culprit and tried to poison the princess. He wanted to kill her. Soon after this, the Marquis Sherrington was executed. He was hanged in front of all the subjects of the king. However, the capture of the criminal did not benefit. Everyone decided that the Marquis did this because of a personal hostility towards the princess. The girl reviewed the papers. She thought that she could already catch the Dowager Empress by the tail, but did not work out. She wanted to try to expose the results. But he escaped from the kingdom, leaving a huge duty. The girl looked at the Cardan. Now it's worth worrying about him, not about the Dowager Empress. Cardan studied the papers and did not pay attention to the behavior of Valois. He is immersed in his thoughts. The words of King Marquis Sherrington did not go out of the princess from his head. Why did he protect her? It is possible that someday her head will be broken precisely by Cardan. She should be ready for this. Suddenly the king returned from his thoughts and said, "By the way." The girl looked at the king surprisingly. He came closer and asked, "When she arranges him to meet with Eleanor?" The princess laughed, pretending to remember everything. She did not know who Eleanor really was. If the king has such desires, she, as a subject, must fulfill this desire, the girl said. It will take some time, since not all preparations are completed yet. Cardan grabbed the girl by the shoulder. In this case, there is nothing to do, he said with a smile. He can only wait. But it was clear that he was craving for this meeting, Cardan thought. Judging by the words and reaction of Valois, she really lost her memory. Initially, the Marquise had to torture, and then execute the most strict way, but everything failed. Cardan thought. Valois sat in her office by studying the papers. She was passionate and immersed in the process. There was enough late hour and knocked on the door. Valois thought who could come so late. It was a servant of the king, he said. Coral ordered to urgently bring Princess Valois to him. The girl was surprised why. What kind of urgency in order to call her late at night to herself? Probably something happened. What did Cardan plan? We are heading towards the bedchamber, not his office. The girl was following the servant. Cardan cannot be touched to the princess. This was not the case in the original plot. They came to the Cardan bedroom. The servant knocked on the door, and the girl entered the king. See, shocked the girl. She froze the speechless. Cardan sat on his throne with a glass in one robe. His torso was bare. The king turned and looked at the girl. Come closer. She came closer. What's happening? The king's behavior has changed. She had to survive so much recently. He called her to him to console her personally. How he was going to console her. Why does he need all this? The brain spoke. It is necessary to keep yourself in your hands so that it does not happen. The girl understood. That's right, but to retreat too late. You need to do something. She decided to diffuse this strange atmosphere and effectively opened a bottle of wine. The girl poured wine into glasses and tapped them of other glasses with champagne. She will show her skills in the Korean office worker. Depressed over many years of corporate parties, the girl said. She is grateful to the king and wants to express her gratitude to him. Cardan was surprised. Valoa leaned over and said, She still knows how. The countess was satisfied with herself. The king drank a glass of champagne and said, He simply invited her to drink and relax. And she began to do. He left all the glasses on the table. He told Valoa herself to fit here. The countess did not expect such a turn of events. His invitation for her is a special honor. She decided to start from the toast of the dedicated to the king. For each word, Valoa will drink a penalty glass, Cardan said. The girl could no longer drink. The king was sitting very thoughtful. He seemed to be very far from his chambers and situations. He said, On such days, he often has thoughts about Eleanor. The countess was surprised at such a revelation. We have not talked about her for a long time. Cardan continued his monologue. What is he talking about? The girl thought. The king took the countess by the face. She will be able to provide him with one small service. Eleanor is beautiful. She has golden brown hair, eyes of the same color, a gentle face and a beautiful smile. The king spoke of Eleanor. Valoa said with a smile. She would also like to meet her. But suddenly she lost consciousness. She fell right on the shoulder of the Cardan. He managed to grab her so that the countess did not fall. What about her? Why she lost consciousness? Perhaps because of alcohol, Cardan thought. The next morning, when Valoa woke up, she was very angry. She was lying in a Cardan's bed in one nightie. What happened last night? Because of alcohol, she did not remember anything at all. Recently, it is very sensitive. She turned around. Around the things of her and the king were lying. What happened? The girl got up, but the king came in. He said, It is a pity that the countess does not remember, or her feelings changed overnight. He continued with a smile. He wanted to play a girl. Valoa became ashamed. Because of all her might, she tried to remember what she had done last night. She decided to lie to the king, saying that she remembered everything that was to the smallest detail. He answered, We'll see and see. Cardan continued the game. He said, It is wonderful that Valoa remembers everything. He really liked everything. He ordered the next night to wait. He clearly liked this game and the opportunity to beat the girl. The girl looked at him with shyness. She had no idea what happened, but she liked this game. When the king was left alone to him, a raven, Cardan made excuses for the bird that there was nothing. She was embarrassed and began to undress. I wound myself and thought of stupid things, so he decided to play a trick on her. She didn't even say anything. Doesn't she really know anything about his mother? Cardan looked at the crow. He invites him to send the princess somewhere. In her documents, there are not any records of his mother, but there could be traces. He must send the princess somewhere, the girl thought. Before the shoot, she will slap the slap to the emperor for such games with her. She guessed about lies. She went to the temple. The king threw off the obligation to write a speech to her to enter the position. She was outraged. It is not bad that she left the palace under the pretext of the ceremony. Otherwise, she will soon go crazy there. After praying, we proceed to the ceremony of entering the post of high priest. The countess thought. The ceremony began. The priest held a candle in his hands and spoke. I return his life to him in his hands. In front of him stood a girl in a robe with candles in her hands. She seemed to worship the priest. They touched with candles, and 2 candles lit up. This meant the ceremony is successful. The priest and the girl sat opposite each other with candles in her hands. They prayed and people watched them. The priest called the princess to make a solemn speech. The girl was scared because she never did something. She never made a report at school, even with a report. But here is a congratulatory speech. Going to the center, thought the girl. With all her heart, she congratulates the high priest and hoped that he will look after all the inhabitants of the empire. The previous priest took off this burden on the dignity, continued Valoa. Ahead is calm and joyful days without worries and burden of duties. The princess continued with joy. Subjects considered her words heartless. How can she say that? Everyone cried. The princess did not understand what was happening, why everyone reacts like that. She said something wrong. Aside stood a former high priest who had just departed. He laughed, according to Valoa. He thanked the princess. For the first time he liked the speech, and he fell a stone from his soul. The priest patted his hands. He watched the princess and everything that was happening in the temple. His applause spread throughout the temple. Each guest watching the ceremony heard them. After the ceremony, the priest thanked the princess for coming. Thanks to him for accepting her meager speech well. The priest continued. Given the fact that the princess for the first time in a long time visited the temple, he wanted to show her something. Does the princess want to look at their candle? In gesture, inviting the priest called. The princess did not seem so religious to put candles. The staircase was round and long and led to some basement. Is the candle to be there? The priest confidently walked forward along the underground corridor. This is here, he said to the princess. Valoa was very surprised. Why do they hide a candle underground? It should be in a prominent place. They went into the hall, in which there were a huge number of candles. Despite the underground location, the hall was light. The girl was struck by the beauty of the underground hall. She did not expect to see this. I thought everything would be much worse. The priest said, Your candle is there. And with a gesture, he pointed to the side of the Princess of Valoa. The girl saw a lot of candles on the table. One of them was signed by her name. She came up and said, I pass my life in your hands. She believed in her words. There is only one candle belonging to a noblewoman. Valoa thought this horror stories. If the candle goes out, the owner would die. The priest laughed. Of course these are horror stories, he said. The words of the princess made him laugh. These are all empty rumors. The candle placed for him, even with a blow of the wind, will not go out. The candle has never been extinguished because of external reasons. But did not the priest's candle go out at the ceremony? All because the priests who took off the dignity of the high priest in the passage go to heaven. Now it's clear why people were so shocked by hearing her congratulatory speech. The girl made excuses. She had nothing to do during the speech. The priest said, Everything is fine, and he liked it. However, the priest is interested in what intentions the candle of Valoa put. She is so desperate. Valoa thought, True, why does she need it all? She did not remember anything. She did not understand. Cardan sorted out the papers in her office. He was looking for evidence, information about his mother in the papers of Valoa. The girl left the temple with thoughts. She really does not remember anything and does not know about the princess. Cardan angrily threw the papers on the table. He did not find anything about his mother. Even having lost the memory of the princess, he remains himself. Everything is in order in her papers. It is impossible to understand that she lost her memory. Suddenly, the king saw a closed box in the princess's table and pulled the handle. Is it really closed to the castle? What she breaks in this box, this cannot be. Suddenly, Cardan heard Valoa's voice and approaching steps. She forgot to close the door to the office. Strange. The girl entered the office. Why did she not lock the door? She always monitors it. Pigeons cooed in cages, and the girl approached them. Why do they behave so actively? Is it really someone to get into the office and bolted the birds? Cardan, meanwhile, hid outside the window. Half a day of the absence of Valoa is not enough to find out everything and revise all the papers. Why did she return? You need to find a way to send it from the palace for a long time, Cardan thought. The girl watched the birds. Cardan called Valoa to his place. He did not come up with nothing better to say. I want wine. The girl seemed absurd such a request, but she did not give a look. What he says. Of course she will call the chamberlain and tells him to give him wine. But Carol stopped her. No need. He wanted to drink a sustained wine. The princess said that there was no such thing in the palace. The king was upset that he could console him. The girl remembered that evening when Cardan invited her to drink wine to console her, then scattered things in the room in the morning around, and the king's game. If the king wants wine, she will turn everything upside down to get it. The girl returned to her office and called Count Manhwa. He came and bowed to the princess. If she called it due to a delay in tax payment, it takes a little time, and he will pay everything. What kind of taxes? What Manhwa is talking about? The girl did not know anything about the financial problems of the count. It seems that before her appearance in the short story, the princess did something. She will have to deal with it. The girl called the count about this. She said that the count would not be worried about taxes. She was going to send people to his possessions and wanted to ask for his assistance. The count asked why people. There you need to find something nearby. The princess answered. The book was on her lap. She can also help their trade activities. The count looked indignant that she was about to look for from him. He apologized that he did not understand the deep meaning of the words of the countess. The girl accepted his words as consent. The count did not know that the princess was interested in sea aircraft. He clearly did not understand what she wanted to find. She was not very interested in this area, but it was necessary to play along. Just out of the desire to be useful to the emperor, she studied different industries. The girl answered with a smile. A few months later, on the ship of Count Manhwa, the servants from the depths of the sea took the treasure. As the princess said, in the underwater reef, there was a sunken ship, and on it, the girl looked into the bag. There were many bottles of old wine of 696. Valoa was delighted. The wine is just suitable. She was given over the months of work and a distant path. The countess told the servants, if they get all the remaining things from the sunken ship, for each we'll add a gold coin. We'll get it now, the servants said with enthusiasm, and dived into the water. Valoa and Count Waloa were observed. Manhwa asked, how does the countess know about a sunken ship with invaluable wine? The question was surprised by the princess. She decides to lie. Because she is a hit. She cannot say that she knows the plot in advance. The original does not have the exact location of the ship, but she was able to collect fragmented information and find the ship. The girl thought, while working a lot, you can learn. The count believed her and answered, clear. Manhwa asked for a bottle of wine for his daughter. She soon has a birthday. Valoa agreed to share. Probably his daughter is a beauty, like her father. They both laughed at this conversation. Her blonde hair is especially lovely. The count continued, is his daughter the same girl? Cardan loves girls with blonde hair. They always surrounded the king, and he does not change his tastes. What if you give the Cardan the daughter of Manhwa? He will forget about the countess, or will continue to pursue her. She understands that this is a great chance and decides to use it. She takes the count by the shoulder. Recently, it has been very tired. Only with the support of the empire is developing, but the emperor has not yet pulled himself together. Therefore, Valoa seems that the daughter of Manhwa will be able to calm down the emperor's temper. Countess's words shocked the count. He did not expect such an offer from the countess. The princess ordered the servants, put the remaining things obtained under water and wine, and send to the palace. Valoa ordered to do it secretly, so that no one in the kingdom would know about it. The servants listened to her. The servants of the divers awaited further instructions, and the princess came an interesting idea. She was not going to the palace yet. In addition to the found ship, there were several more sank, and the princess ordered to find them for a good reward. Valoa ordered everything to be kept secret. If someone finds out, she will punish everyone. The servant said, they will be dumb and ask to spare. The girl laughed to herself. It was just a request to keep the secret. She was not going to punish anyone. She knew that the servants were not afraid of her, but a real princess. But still she was sad and hard on her soul. The next day there was a magnificent ball in the palace. All courtiers danced and had fun. The atmosphere was solemn. Princess Valoa stood aside in a magnificent blue dress, immersed in her thoughts. She was at the ball, but far away. Suddenly, the princess was called. Your Mightiness! She turned around, holding a glass of champagne in her hand, and was surprised by the guest. This was her old acquaintance with whom she was gloriously traveling on the ship. Count Manhwa, he came to the ball. Let me imagine my daughter. The count said to the princess. She was surprised if the count agreed to her proposal. The count's daughter was dressed in a pink dress. Her hair, as they said, were brown and long. She bowed politely. The girl thought. She was even more beautiful than she represented. Brown hair, just an ideal party for the cardan. But the girl had a feeling that she was destroying the life of the count's daughter. How correct her act will be. The daughter of the count said that she was very excited hearing her father's story. Valoa was very surprised at her enthusiasm. The girl dreamed. Is she really the first woman of the king? The countess even spit out the wine back into the glass in surprise. Valoa said. The girl will not be the first, but she did not hear her. Will she really be with the one who dreamed about since childhood? The count said in a whisper. Seeing Cardan in the body, the daughter fell in love at first sight. Is it really unimportant? If the countess against making his daughter is in concubine, he can say at any time, he will not insist. The princess will not object to such a couple. Lenoa decided to turn to her with a request, because she was the longest under the king. The princess should know the tastes of the king. The count continued. The girl was very surprised at this beginning of the request of the count. Lenoa was afraid, but still continued. He wanted to ask the princess to prepare his daughter as a bride for the cardan. Meanwhile, the ball continued in the palace. The guests had fun and danced. Everything was beautiful and calm. Cardan sat on his throne and missed. He was immersed in his thoughts. They were far from this ball. He looked at all the courtiers and understood this ball. As he bored it all, he wanted something else. Although Cardan escorted the countess from the palace, he did not find a clock of his mother. In a double-bottom drawer, there was only Grossbuch. Cardan wanted to get drunk with despair. Why there are no hooks about his mother? He so wanted to find at least something. The king felt very lonely. He could not have no one to share his experiences with. He kept everything in himself. Suddenly, Valoa entered the hall. Everyone paid attention to the princess. She apologized to the cardan for being late. The girl was happy to greet the king. She was tired of the trip and was glad to return to the palace. The king was very surprised at the appearance of the countess. He did not expect to see her. She thought far on a ship at sea. The guests whispered. Was the princess should not have left on the orders of Cardan to find 300 years of wine. The countess thought that these discussions were complete absurd. The king's order was connected directly with death. Cardan smiled maliciously. His plan, albeit not for long, but worked. He had the opportunity to search the princess's office. The king asked, I brought wine or the time has come, and to the countess to leave it. The princess smiled. The wine was delivered for a long time. The girl turned to the door. Satisfied the desire of Cardan the meaning of her life, she called the daughter of Lenoa to serve the wine. Let me present. The port of the crop of the 696th year produced in the province of Manhwa, Valoa said. The daughter of Count Lino dutifully presented a tray with wine and a glass of the king. She wanted to please the cardan. All those present were surprised. As the countess managed to get 300 years of wine, they doubted that she would succeed. Valoa thought with a grin. Whether the cardan liked her masterpiece in the form of a fair-haired girl and 300 years of wine, she squeezed juices from fashion designers to emphasize the beauty of the girl, and she put on a black dress to be exhausted. What is happening? Why the king does not look at the girl? He looks closely at the countess itself. As her plan did not work, Cardan did not take his eyes off Valoa. Really the countess, she conceived something, but something, she wants to deceive him again. He should not look at her, but at the daughter of Count Lion. This behavior has infuriated the countess. What to do? Suddenly, the girl asked, You can already present the wine to His Majesty. Vala answered, Yes. Maybe not everything is lost. The daughter of the count poured wine into the glass of the cardan. The girl behaved very restrained, but her heart trembled with excitement. The king brought a glass to his mouth to taste wine. He drank slowly, studying the taste of wine and enjoying the drink. As expected, the princess did not disappoint him. This is the best wine that the king has ever tried in his life. Again this smile, so he really liked the wine. It's time to act. This is the best moment. The girl decided. Valoa asked, You can tell her a few words. Cardan answered, Thanks to her, his mood improved, let him say. At the sight of the empty rooms of the empire, she is tormented by a conscience for insufficient zeal. The guests were surprised from the words of the princess. She dares to ask the king to accept the daughter of Count Lenoa as a concubine and strengthen her heart. She said the countess. The king was shocked by such a proposal to the princess. His glass with wine shook in his hands from surprise and excitement. The guests whispered, "The imperial court has long been needed by the heir. The palace is empty, and time goes. It is necessary to continue the genus." Someone said, "Didn't Cardan stop talking about the royal wedding?" This topic was a taboo in the palace for a long time. So it is so. But the proposal from the princess is completely different. Perhaps the king will listen to her and take his concubine. If the princess herself asks him, so be it. The king decides to agree. The countess did not expect such success. Cardan will try to trust Valoa once again. He will take this girl to his concubines, Cardan said with a smile. In his office, Valoa was blowing the installation of the daughter of Count Lenoa. He answered, "I will try to be more prudent. All manners, the educated and etiquette of which I taught you. Drop it and follow the call of the heart," she said the countess. In the original, the emperor did not have an interest in the modest. He wanted a free relationship. Carral often changed the girls. Such a person as a Cardan does not need recognition of feelings. Valoa thought to myself. He is interested in love joys. "Don't worry," she said the countess. She took the hand of Count Lenoa by the hand to express her support. She will help her. The girl was full of confidence that she would succeed. She was tuned to win the king very decisively. The countess said nothing, she thought. Whether her plan will work. Is the daughter of Count Lenoa too self-confident? But there is a chance. If the Cardan has his eyes in place, he will not miss such a charm. The girl was very sweet and beautiful. She obeyed the countess. After a while, the girl cried in the chambers of the Cardan. She was very upset by the situation and her behavior. Cardan wondered, what only happened? Why did she do this? He was disappointed with his slave. Valoa ran into the chambers all excited. The servants raised the noise that happened to the king. Is the plan failed? The girl saw the daughter of Lenoa, who cried on the floor, and the Cardan, who stood aside and was perplexed from what was happening. Valoa was indignant inside herself. Why does he offend the innocent girl? He is of course a tyrant. But why? You have to resolve the conflict, the king said. My trust in you turned into disappointment. He stared at the countess, causing guilt. The girl bowed her head. There is no forgiveness to her. She understood that it was necessary to continue to play the role of the faithful servant of the king. Even by death, do not atone for her bad service. What broke the king's peace? Valoa continued her game. The servants, meanwhile, tried to reassure the daughter of Count Lenoa. She was still crying. The servants brought her out of the chambers of the Cardan. Valoa asked what the girl was guilty of. Cardan answered, she wanted to kill him. The girl could not believe. Count Lenoa had hidden plans. Why does he need all this? What a benefit to him from the death of Cardan? The girl was perplexed. Who just taught her in the bride? He first sees such a daring woman. Cardan continued. The countess listened. Valoa asked, daring. She asked the girl to be more restrained. Cardan answered. She tried to bite him. The king approached the girl in order to show, as an example, how the daughter of Count Lenoa tried to bite him. Like this. Cardan looked at the reaction of the countess. What she will do next, hit him or keep silent, as always. Valoa stared at the king. That he only did. How he dared to bite her. You need to remain calm. She had no words. He had kicked out the count's daughter for an attempt to kiss him. It turns out the king deceived her, breaking the plan. Cardan was sorry, because the girl's appearance and outfit were his taste. He spoke and watched the reaction of the countess. The girl was in the nightshirt, the count said. This does not mean that he does not like her outfit. Valoa froze with bewilderment. He again reminded her of that night, when she had a lot to get drunk and did not remember anything. Damn, she already forgot about it, Cardan said. Why does Valoa wear these monstrous glasses? Without glasses, he likes her more. And he touched her face. That he was planning again. This is his insidious plan. Valoa tried to read Cardan's thoughts in her gaze, but could not. She decided not to succumb to the spells and stop it all. The girl pushed the king away from all his might. Cardan was very surprised why the countess behaves like that with him. She answered, "It's already very late, and it is time for her to go. About the case of the daughter of Count Lenoa, she will report to him after the investigation, at the meeting." With these words, the countess left. Cardan remained alone. He thought about the princess, about the girl, about his mother. How to deal with this all? Meanwhile, Count Lenoa did not believe that his daughter could encroach on the king's life. He cried, "She is not capable of this. This is slander. She so admired his majesty." The count fell to his knees in front of Valoa and prayed for mercy. Lenoa continued, "Last time, he did not deliberately behaved tactlessly in relation to the countess." Valoa thought, "He did not concentrate at a meeting of ministers, learned about the princess's case, and she was not given alcohol." The count said, "Does the count think that she was all set up?" Valoa thought. The count continued to cry and pray for mercy. The countess offered to wait until everything settles. She too is very sorry that this happened. Then there will be explanations. Lenoa decided to offer a new ship in return for the liberation of his daughter. Valoa liked the one on which they swam. Perhaps with the help of the ship, the countess will be able to escape. The chance of salvation has grown. Countess's eyes caught fire at the thought of this. The count was looking forward to an answer to his proposal. He really wanted to save his daughter from execution. She is innocent. Valoa took out a sheet and a pen and invited the count to draw up a contract with her. The girl shone with thoughts about her salvation. Everyone gathered in the throne room to endure the verdict of the daughter of Count Lenoa. Whether the Cardan will forgive the girl such an act. The count cried and prayed for the mercy of his daughter. Valoa thought about the contract. She received a ship, but there was no confidence. "I am not sure that he can stop the Cardan if he decides to punish the count's family, but she would have to save herself at least." The king was thinking about what to do. Execute a girl, or forgive and let go with her father account. He was silent. Valoa thought, "It is necessary to do something if the Cardan is silent for a long time. It can end poorly for everyone." She raised her hand and said that in the end, she would like to discuss the details of the incident with Countess Lino. The countess committed a serious crime that does not deserve forgiveness. Valoa continued. The count shuddered with horror. However, there was no attempt to harm. This happened later, an excess of feelings and lack of manners. The girl said, such words were very surprised by the Cardan. He did not expect the countess to respond so much about her recent ward. Valoa understands what the column needs to please. She is a saint, and she says, "This is all my fault." All were shocked by the behavior of Valoa. She wanted to bear responsibility for the act of Countess Lenoa. The king was probably horrified, but this is all to protect his high position. Cardan was very surprised by these words. Having devoted all of herself, she will certainly find a humane and not wild concubine for the Cardan. Valoa proudly summed up. Some time later, Valoa apologized to Countess Lino for bad help to her. She did everything possible. The girl was very sad. She will never see a Cardan again because of her misconduct. She is punished. Valoa thought, "This is the dandelion girl. How can you do this?" But she remembered the cruelty of Cardan and exhaled. The countess said, "If someone likes the girl, let her tell her. She will help everything that can." Lenoa thanked. She would like to ask the countess to look after her father. The countess said modestly, dropping her eyes with shame. Valoa was surprised at such a strange request. Why monitor the graph, especially since he lives separately and often travels? The girl said that she would give in to the Cornish countess. Valoa thought that she heard without believing her ears. Lenoa quickly ran away from the countess without looking back. Valoa called the girl, but everything was in vain. She ran away. The girl was outraged. What it was now at all. How Lenoa dared to tell her about Cardan. When the girl was taken away by the servants in tears, she turned around and saw the Cardan looked at the countess. He has feelings. Valoa stood in her nightie in front of the king. He looked at her in love with a look. The countess thought at that moment, Cardan actually did not love her. He is faithful to the countess. His gaze speaks more than his mouth. Lenoa thought, After what she saw, she herself did not want to fight for love anymore. The king decided to have mercy on the girl, and she left. Meanwhile, Count Lenoa thanked Valoa for the liberation of his daughter and get rid of punishment. He was happy. The girl was still gratitude. If possible, he will substitute her. The count swore that his words were honest. The countess did not listen to Count Lenoa. She was not interested. She studied the papers and thought about her. Let it say. An interesting thought came to her. If the count really wants to thank her, she has one option: how to do it. Lenoa slammed his hands with happiness. What the countess came up with him. He was in anticipation of the assignment. The princess asked to introduce her to the slave war. Once again, she calculated everything ahead and thought about it. The count was scared and began to speak. The slave trade is illegal. He does not know anything about it. The countess did not believe him. No need to be so surprised. She asks for a reason. She has great interest in the slave trade market, Valoa said. The count was afraid that Cardin would learn about this, but the girl assured that this would not happen. This is in her interest too. The Marquis of Trebier, we can say by chance that the countess considers his daughter as a concubine, Valoa suggested. After a while, Trebier invited the countess to his castle. She was very happy about the invitation and asked for forgiveness for employment. The count arrived from afar as soon as he found out that he was looking for Countess Valoa. He was also glad of their meeting. With them was Count Lenoa. He watched the conversation as he conveyed the news of Trebier and was interested in success. As expected, the Marquis is hostile, since Valoa took power into her own hands, moving the previous emperor. With the Marquis was his daughter, Madame Trebier. She also agreed to come to a meeting with Princess Valoa. The girl was, as expected, with brown hair and green eyes. In appearance, quiet and educated. Cardin will like her. Valoa told Trebier that she was thinking of inviting the king as a concubine, his daughter. Valoa thought out everything. The count asked, and if there is a batch, as with Countess Lenoa, the princess will take responsibility for his daughter. Don't worry, the princess said. The emperor is looking for a calm and reasonable girl. His daughter approaches this role. The count agreed. His daughter is really calm, the countess said. He does not want to help Cardin alone and think about the family. In the family of Valoa, problems with the legacy and the king are simply necessary for a concubine, the girl said, drinking a little wine from the glass. Trebier thought, it's really time for them to get a family. He liked the idea of the princess, and he supported her. Let it be so. Before the transaction, the countess suggested enjoying irreparable entertainments. We need to relax, later all state affairs. The count did not understand what Valoa was talking about, but he was interested to have fun and relax from government and trade. He broke into a smile. How he can help Princess. The count wanted to start the game as soon as possible. The girl suggested checking serviceability and readiness. The plan began to work, and she was happy with her success. The count brought Valoa to the slave market. She wanted to get acquainted with slaves and see the situation. Trebier asked the princess to put a mask on his face so that no one would recognize them and nothing to suspect. The count opened the door, and there was a forest tower downward. Trebier said, "We are here." And he led the princess forward. Prisoners in chains and handcuffs sat everywhere. There were blood spots everywhere. The sight is not for the faint of heart. The guests in masks looked as if they had come to some ball. They had fun with slaves and drank wine. Valoa and the count entered the hall. There were tables and near them with prisoners everywhere. The market looked as strange as possible. The girl saw how rudely they treated the slaves they pulled and beat them. They did not have the strength to resist. They submitted. The princess nervously began to crush her dress. She needs to behave at ease and calmly so that no one suspects. She understood that it was not the time to act. She had a plan. Its goal is to destroy this slave market. In the corner of the hall stood guards with weapons and spears in iron uniforms. They guarded a man. Ahead was a bald stranger in a rich robe. He was thoughtful and serious. He watched everyone. Trebier said, "This person is the owner of the market. He is a little cruel given what he is doing, but he knows his job well." The man folded his hands and asked, "On what issue did Valoa and Trebier come?" Hands were completely decorated with rings. "Why such an outstanding person?" Like the princess honored such a contemptuous person like him, the girl thought. He knows who she is and hints that she does not waste time, but immediately went to business. She wanted to get a share. If she receives slaves from the market, contributes to its legalization. The owner was shocked by words. Trebier was also surprised by the words of the princess. He turned around and asked, "Is it really true? She wants to join." There is no better pretext for receiving grossbooks and notes about moving slaves than legalization. The princess thought, "Can a bargain who abducts and sells people for the sake of profit reject her offer?" The owner thought, "Perhaps I will refuse." After a long thought, the man said, he was unprofitable for this proposal from Valoa. Princess and the count were shocked. How he could refuse such a proposal. It turns out she in vain came here. The count shouted, "Foul, what found you? Really don't understand what a chance it is." The owner replied that he had no guarantees. Valoa thought that Faust's desires to think over and have guarantees from the princess. Quite reasonable. She cannot give up. The tyrant should fall in love with Princess Esselin. The war between the countries is also not far off. Valoa should prevent at least a rebellion of slaves and get time to avoid the script. As a gratitude, she is ready to invest 1 billion league. This is sufficient evidence for sincerity. This is a very large sum for such an insignificant person as him. Faisie answered. It was evident that the proposal is tempting to him. He is pleased that such are interested in his petty business, but he likes the current situation. He refused again. It is somehow suspicious that the Fayus has rejected such a profitable offer, Valoa thought. The count said that the Faust was crazy. Is it really not about money? The girl thought. But in what then what the market owner wants to get, if not money? The man was silent, immersed in his thoughts. The proposal was very tempting and profitable, but not for him and not now. Behind him stood a girl who overheard the whole conversation. Faust did not notice the presence and was immersed in his thoughts. Well, if this is the will of Faust, Valoa will come again when there will be an opportunity for a transaction. The facet was not going to give up. She held out her hand to the market owner to shake. The man thought, and was in no hurry to answer the hands of the countess. Finally he got up and said, "Fine." He meet with the countess again, but not the fact that she can convince him, the count said. Faust did not agree to the proposal, because he knows the countess poorly. He will try to persuade him. Valoa answered, "Not worth it. She can handle it herself." Faust is a stranger and is not as simple as it seems at first glance. He is from Esland. Why would he come right here to arrange a slave market? This is weird, the girl thought. The ego handsome was strong, and behind a business with the market, someone else is worth it. But who and why is it necessary? If the count does not want to be accused of treason, it is better to break relations with the slave market, Valoa said. He mastered the mines, and that is why he got involved in the slave trade. How does she know everything? The count thought. He was amazed. Valoa will return all prisoners to their lands and asks the count to return their status. He said that he would do everything. She will pay the count for another service. The count answered, "Of course he will do anything. He must follow the Fayus, who he meets, where he finds slaves. The count must report to Valoa all about this. To begin with, they will go like this." Then she had a different plan. Suddenly someone screamed, "Save my brother!" The countess turned into a cry. One of the slaves was furious. She screamed and asked where her brother was. She begged to save him and cried bitterly. It looks like one of the slaves resists. This often happens. The count whispered to the ear of Valoa, "Damn the slave market." The slaves were barefoot, and the girl drew attention to this. What a terrible atmosphere here. She wanted to leave as soon as possible. Suddenly, one of the slaves hit the guard next to the girl with all his might. The guard flew to the side and fell to the floor. The man screamed. The slave broke out and asked to call more security. But the guy continued to beat the man, already his hands. Suddenly, the countess realized that the guy seemed very familiar to her. Incredible. The countess could not believe her eyes. This is Lord Iton. What he does here, and how he got here. How he was caught. Because the whole kingdom was looking for him. Iton deftly continued to fight off the attacks of the guards. He was a skilled fighter and owned various ceremony. The guards could not defeat him. Damn slave. They were beaten and exhausted from attacks, tried to get their weapons. He was approaching the manager of the chambers. The guards tried to get up, but could not. The man was scared. The Lord slowly approached, and the man screamed, "Where is the security? What she is doing at all?" He was afraid that the slave would harm him. The Lord was very angry. They promised him that they would let Catherine in exchange for him. They did not keep their promise. Suddenly, one of the guards approached from behind and hit with all his might, with a sword on the back of the outcome. The Lord fell unconscious. Other guards arrived in time for a slave and tried to grab him. The manager shouted, "Tie him so that he could not move." Iton broke up. "Let go! Let go!" shouted Iton. They agreed on a completely different one. He was deceived. He was tied up and thrown to the floor. "Shut up and sit quietly." Catherine ran up to him. She wanted to save him. The manager shouted, "We saw which strong man. If only he will train him to do any work easily." The Lord sat connected. Catherine was sitting nearby. The market began auction for such a capable slave. Who will buy it? Valoa was shocked when he saw the Lord and Dona. The Count noticed and asked, "Princess, you are not good." "No, it became stuffy, probably due to the fact that they are in the basement." The Countess answered, "This happens." The Count agreed. The girl was nervous. You can't confuse in such a situation. Besides, the Count of the killer, attempting to her life. Iton was very angry, but helpless and connected. He wanted to get out of slavery, but he could not. Trading was arranged for him. If the girl pretends to know him, then why she is better than the Princess of Waloa? You need to make a decision, and faster. The manager took bets. Let's start with 1,000 leagues. Those who want to purchase, raise your hand and call your price. Valoa decided to come closer. This is the most exciting sight lately. Finally something interesting. She was without a mask, but interest could not stop her to leave the slave trade market. In addition, the Lord Iton here. The crowd recognized her. This is Princess Valoa in a dress and a wig. And here, already, his hands pulling his hands. People said. The girl laughed. Still everyone considered her brutal, and no one could compare with her. But this is all about the princess. She went to the Lord and Catherine, and pointing her finger at them, "I will buy these." Everyone was surprised by the appearance of Valoa. The princess will give 100 million leagues for 2 slaves and pay immediately. She wanted to buy a lord, Catherine his sister, then her. The manager introduced slaves. Iton Noxos, a 26-year-old man, and a girl, Catherine Noxos, 20 years old. They kneeling. "Now it's your mistress, serve her well," the manager said. "Stop," he said, "Eaton Noxos." The countess came in. Upon learning that his sister died after the sale of slaves in the market, he was distraught by grief. With a sword, headed the uprising of slaves. Thanks to the innate talent and anger from loss, he reached the skill of owning a sword and contributed to the fall of the empire. Was Lord Iton really a key person? The manager said. The deal can be terminated, but Waloa went to the end. She bought slaves. Here is the summa promised. She said the countess and handed the manager a full bag of gold coins, 100,000 leagues. Thanks for the invitation, Vala said. Let her call her next time. Slaves stood in front of her, all the head of her head. The Lord raised his head and said, Mistress. Such appeals were surprised by Valoa. He doesn't remember who stands in front of him. The Lord continued timidly. Can he turn to her so shamelessly? This is a very nice appeal, the princess thought. She decides to listen to the request. The Lord said that his sister is not to blame. All the wine lies on him. He did not ask him for his past misconduct. He is ready to accept any death. Patowing continued to say the Lord. The Lord begged only one thing, let his sister Catherine go. The countess was not surprised at such a request. He wanted to save his sister. The girl realized that the Lord thinks that she bought them only out of revenge, given the notorious glory of the Princess Valoa. He was preparing for his death. The Lord is ready to receive any punishment in return to the will of his sister. The girl thought. After thought, she said, Well, I will restore your sister's status. She is not a real princess and not so cruel. Iton was very surprised by this decision and nobility of the princess. He insanely thanked her for such a service. He is ready to pay this even at the cost of his own life. The bow was beaten off in front of Princess Valoa. The Marquis looked strangely. "Why are you looking so?" asked the princess. "I saw that you are fulfilling the requests of slaves," the lord said. How observant he is. Of course, how she will not fulfill the request of her future lover. The girl decided to joke. All were shocked, but then the lord said, "That's why you bought it. What taste you have." Number Valoa firmly answered. Meanwhile, a raven flew into the palace. He reported the news about the princess, the king. He listened carefully to the bird, and he thought why she pretended to be so good. Will she really make her lover? Cardan was surprised. Meanwhile, Valoa, along with Katrine and Catherine, returned to the palace. The princess decided to ask why Itan wanted to kill her. Due to debts. His father was an avid player and packed all the money in gambling. Eaton answered, ultimately, due to debts, his father had to leave Catherine as a pledge in the slave trade market. The usurer told him, or he sells Catherine into slavery and repays the debt either. The lord did not have time to say, kills her. The princess continued instead of the lord. The lord nodded in response. Now everything became clear to her why he did this. Itan continued. But the attempt failed, and they, together with Catherine, were both sold. My sister slept on his shoulder. The princess was indignant. She gave him a chance then to admit why he had nothing to say on her journey. The lord answered, he is not blind and not deaf, as after all the rumors he could trust the princess. The girl was in shock with recognition. Now he understood that the servants were false. He thought that if he was caught and interrogated, there was a tenant after killing him. The girl thought. If she were a real princess, Eaton would not have reached the capital. Death would be in place. She had a headache, but still she decided to ask something else in the last. So far there was such an opportunity. The customer was the Dowager Empress. Valoa asked. Number Eaton firmly answered, looking into the eyes of the princess. After a short silence, he continued. It was the employer Fas. This was not easy for Lorda, but he was supposed to. The Dowager Empress always stared closely at the princess, interfering with her. I did not miss the opportunity to annoy the slave trader who wanted to kill her hands. They were both natives of Eastland, another country. Valoa thought that all this happened due to the fact that King was a princess from Eastland. But now I understood everything. The war, the uprising of slaves, and the fall of the empire were all carefully planned by the Dowager Empress. They arrived at the palace, and leaving the carriage of the girl stagnated. The head was terribly sick of the news and the recognition of Outen. She probably overstirred too much. You need to be calmer and think everything over at your leisure. You need to go to the office. The Lord Eaton said to her. You are okay on the hostess. He was grateful to the princess and worried about her. She turned to him, but he interrupted her. What a lord! He is not even general of the guard, just Eaton, as befits a slave. Slavery is illegal, the princess answered. But still, he asked her to call it just Eaton. Okay, the girl answered dutifully. She will give them with her sister and asks to leave the capital and start a new life somewhere else. Eaton answered harshly, Don't want. And such an answer was very surprised by Valoa. Why he does not want, she gives him freedom. He asked for release only for Catherine, so that he would pay the debt even at the cost of his life. The guy continued, This is not an empty chatter, but the princess can object to him how to trust him already to betray. He will take an oath of allegiance. The girl said there was no need and thought. Softly creeps, this is another Balaam, and there are two with the sisters. She thought, she does not have more than one supporter, and it will not be easy to destroy the market of slaves alone. She is a Newton supporter to deal with the market once and for all. Valoa decided. She wants to ask for the help of Utno. Whether he is ready in this case, always with her as an advisor. Looking staring at the Lord, asked Valoa. She held out her hand in the conclusion of the deal. She needed help, and Eaton was a good option for this. The Lord agreed with joy. He took the princess's hand and answered, Yes, the mistress. He wanted to serve his savior. Eaton's face came out beautiful, the girl thought. She told the guy, Well, let's go to the castle. The raven followed them. Suddenly, a Cardan appeared, he thought. What extraordinary attachment to her lover even made her advisor. The princess saw Cardan. He nodded to the Suvorov in response and said, "Princess, there is a conversation." He wanted to talk in private. He invited the princess to his chambers, and they went together to him. The girl thought about what the king wanted to talk to her. Not having time to close the door, the prince attacked the princess. "Not any legalization. Stumble from the market of slaves," he said Suvorov. The girl replied that she was not going to legalize him. Karan was sure that she was lying to him and continuing to do it. He learned that she secretly participated in the auction with the Marquis Trebier and met with the slave trader. How to perceive it? It is impossible to princess, instead of understanding, legalizing the slave trade. She did not meet for this. The princess began to cry from the accusations of Cardan. He did not react to the tears of the princess. He considered himself right, the girl thought. It is useless that she does not say he still does not believe her. You need to act differently. Cardan did not look away. He looked angrily at the princess and waited for her to tell him this time. If he does not trust her so much, let him fight, the princess said. Such a proposal surprised Cardan. She decides to attract Cardan to her plan. So even better if he approves him with her hands will be untied, the girl thought convincingly. If the interrogation is already late after that, it will be too late. The Lord saw that the girl began to lose consciousness and fall. He did not understand what was happening and was shocked. The doctor said, "Strong overwork. It looks like she had too many worries lately." The girl was unconscious. Cardan grabbed his head. What a frail she is. Only this was not enough for him. To worry about her and take care of her again. The doctor asked, "Prepare medicines to strengthen health." Valoa was very weak. She felt bad. "As soon as possible." The count answered after a short silence. He stood nearby and looked at the unconscious princess. The next morning, the girl woke up from the bright sun. She woke up from a long sleep. What happened? Why is she in bed? She remembers how she cursed with a tyrant about the market of slaves. After the continuous darkness that happened, the head does not hurt at all. Once here, she often suffers from a headache. Having checked her head, the princess noted. She was about to get up, but suddenly a Cardan came and glorified her. He put Valoa again in bed. The girl was dumbfounded. "And wherever you secretly wanted to slip away?" Suvorov asked him, pointing a finger in the girl's face. He was angry. Why did he come here? The girl was embarrassed, and she was annoyed by this behavior of Cardan. Why he sees her in this form? This is actually her bedroom. She said the countess. "There is nothing at all that I took care of you all night," Cardan said. "This despot was looking for. Also after me." I could not believe in Waloa heard. He exactly tells the truth. She nodded guiltily and said, "Thank you." What did he think again? "We drove." The king answered shortly. Cardan timidly continued. Yesterday he was wrong. Perhaps the girl was bad because of his scream and she lost consciousness. Let's fight together with the slave trade. Suddenly the king continued. The girl was surprised. Did he really agree? And even apologized. "This is a dream. She has a dream." She asked, "You are serious? And what if he plays with her again and lies right into the eyes?" She was very happy, pretending to believe. "Thank you very much, Your Majesty," the girl said. Cardan was surprised at the so joyful reaction of Valoa to his consent. What did the princess plan again? The market is controlled by Esselendets faces. They abduct people and sell them. Surely from the submission of the Dowager Empress. Is it not obvious that the Empress is behind this? A foreigner, a commoner, would not do this without support. She thought he was only for women and alcohol. The pot of the king is cooking, the countess thought. They say that if people change, then death is soon, the end is really close, the girl thought. How to relate to her arrogance. Then, for starters, she will run up a spy to find out the scale of the slave trade and who is behind this. The count answered. Fine. Why is he constantly looking at me so closely? Looking into the eyes of the king, the girl thought. What does his gaze say? Cardan admired the mind and quick wideness of the princess. He stared at her, immersed in his thoughts. By the way, the last time she promised to find a concubine that the king would like. It seems to be found, Valoa said. Cardan was angry. I don't need some kind of... The king began to scream, but stopped remembered what the doctor said. So that there are no more fainting, She needs to avoid stress. Cardan decided to calm down and keep himself in his hands. He answered briefly, "Do it well as you want." But it was evident that such a custody of the princess annoyed him. Valois met in the garden with Madame Trebier. The girl was luxurious in a green dress and looked joyful. The princess clapped her hands with admiration. Impeccable. Now it remains to set a date for a visit to the palace. The girl circled in front of the princess, waving her dress. She really wanted to see the king and meet, but suddenly she, like Mrs. Lenoa, will be kicked out on the same day. This happened due to the fact that the princess did not teach her etiquette. Valois wrote out of the capital the most eminent etiquette teacher. "Thank you for taking care of me," the girl answered. "You, too, are probably a secret to try feelings for His Majesty." Madame Trebier asked. "Princess." Valois was surprised. "You cannot hide from me. I was in your place, and I understand everything. I'm even more grateful for support," continued Trebier. "Contact me if you need help. I am always ready to pay for her," the girl said to the princess. What a déjà vu. Why does she have such a bad foreboding? Valois thought about the behavior of Mrs. Trebier. In the evening, the princess was very nervous in the castle. She went nervously there and back to her office. Eaton noticed this. "Is something bothering you?" he asked the princess. He moved why Valois is so nervous that it happened. "She just worries about Mrs. Trebier," Valois said. "You have prepared it perfectly. She will be with the king," Eaton said. Princess also hoped that everything will be fine. But there was already a precedent, despite good training. The girl thought. "What a precedent?" Eaton asked. But suddenly the door swung open, and a Cardan entered the princess. He looked excited. He stared at the count and princess. But he was silent without saying a word. As if I watched what would happen next. Valois froze. "Why is he here, like Madame Trebier?" she asked excitedly. "Really, something happened. Are you talking about the daughter of the Marquise Trebier?" Cardan asked. The girl froze in anticipation of the answer. She was very nervous. "Forgive the princess, but this is a failure again." As a result, the king answered ironically. But despite the news, he looked quite happy. "The Marquis of Trebier is damn stupid." After a small pause, Cardan said, "He thought where the countess finds such concubines." Valois was perplexed by the words of the king. As a marquise can be stupid. She did not believe her ears. Maybe she was heard. The marquise that has passed in a few days scrupulous teaching etiquette and received knowledge necessary for the aristocrat. She survived the merciless and demanding drill from eminent teachers. He really talks about her or confused with someone. The girl laughed. The mistress who mastered the rules of etiquette was praised that he forced him to think about her. Cardan asked her how to improve the tax policy of the empire or diplomatic mission, but she answered mediocre. The king answered, "Who generally asks for this on the first night?" Of course, no one will answer such questions. The princess was indignant. Disadvantages of the tax system and ways to correct them. Cardan asked. "The tax burden is too large," the girl answered. "A phased decrease in the marginal tax rate is necessary. You see, you answered." The king noted the king of the princess. She answered because she got everything. The princess thought, but she answered, "I was forced to become a princess at a young age, the one who did not even receive an education, like the heiress." The king said harshly in a whisper, looking into the eyes of the princess. It sounded as if he knew how the princess grew. How does he know this? The girl thought. She was surprised at the words of Cardan. Cardan and Valois were not just political opponents. The girl thought. "Comfort the princess and send home," the king said. At the ball, the crowd was discussing. Due to the discrepancy between the interests of the marquise and the emperor, they cannot find common topics for conversation. The princess announced to everyone, officially. Unfortunately, it was decided not to take the marquise in concubines. The marquis was silent. The princess thought he would shout from his daughter. But no, if he has a conscience, he will not do this. The princess fulfilled her part of the contract. Suddenly, the count approached and asked, "Speak as it is, princess, why the daughters refused." The countess barely came up with something folding and did not want to answer. But Cardan suddenly said, "Because she is damn stupid." Why did the king say this? The princess tried to save her authority and began to say that the answer did not suit the king. He asked for tax reforms, but who can keep up with the deep and endless knowledge of the emperor? The princess continued. Such a speech was surprised by Cardan. He did not know that the princess of such a high opinion of him. But she tried to save her authority. The meeting ended, and everyone left the imperial hall. Everyone thought about what had happened and were surprised by such a turn. The princess was very tired and desperate. To open her plan failed. How to please Cardan. But suddenly the girl was called. Do not despair. We know how you tried. Emperor is an extraordinary person. Throw it out of your head. People said. They are on her side. What a sudden comforting party is this, the girl thought. But she was very pleased. Thank you. Thanks to you it became easier for me. The princess thanked. Suddenly a man said that he has a daughter. She wants to become the concubine of the emperor. The princess asked. No, how could you say that? The man answered. Recently, in fact, he heard rumors about the daughter of Count Manhwa. Something happened to the princess. The girl asked. The column is pouring a marriage proposal for his daughter from all sides after that situation. The man said. They have nowhere to fall from an apple from a marriage proposal. And all this thanks to the special training of the princess. What? Vala asked. The marquise is still in the castle, receiving uninitiated lessons on politics. It is good that the princess supports the failed. The man said that he was asking the princess to take care of his daughter. His wife pushed him and began to shout that she was the first. They began to fight among themselves for the championship and pound each other. The princess was evil from such behavior. A few days later, the princess went on a trip and collected cages with pigeons with her. The servants helped her. Itan asked, Where does it go? At the Valoa estate. The princess answered, It seems empty for too long. Before that, she came to Cardan to ask for permission to let her go to the family estate. You have planned something again, the king asked sternly. He did not trust the princess after everything that happened. The princess smiled. What are you talking about? It seems there was no owner too long. At the same time and rest from unnecessary affairs, she was still begged for barons and marquises to teach their daughters. She's tired of it. Eden decided to go after the princess. Itan wanted to be near to protect the princess. He wanted to serve her correctly because she saved him and her sister. The princess was surprised. Is there anyone else besides the debtor who will protect her? Whether she needs protection, she ordered the end to stay in the palace and inform her of the news. Eden dutifully obeyed the princess, although he wanted to go together. Valoa cannot take him to the estate with him because there will probably be evidence regarding Eleanor. The carriage with the princess left. Itan remained to see her gaze without suspecting that the Cardan raven again followed him. Suddenly, Iden heard the noise on the tree and turned around. He saw a raven who emphasized, This raven is suspicious, the guy thought. Meanwhile, the raven caught up with the princess to the princess and flew after it, accompanying her. It was necessary to report the news of the Cardan. The carriage was driving very slowly. At this pace, we have time to get in the evening. The girl thought she was bored. Suddenly, she heard a noise in cages with pigeons. They were covered. Why they raged so much, probably hungry. Among the pigeons was a raven with a white head. The pigeons pecked him. Another where he came from. The princess thought. She took him in her hands and began the raven. Cargul, Cargul. It was difficult for him to be done by a dove, but it was necessary. Strange verps are heard in his cry. So this is the raven which is everywhere dragged with her, a Cardan. Suddenly recognized the bird of the princess. Why his head is white and how he even leaked into a carriage and a cage with pigeons. But suddenly, the raven escaped and flew away. She shouted after, You are you! Just try to spy on me again. The countess was very angry with such a court of the Cardan. They arrived at the Valoa estate. It was very large and beautiful, with a high fence and a fence at the entrance. Is this the Valoa estate? The princess stopped in surprise at the gate, examining the castle with admiration. Such a scale! The maid came up and bowed, said, With the return of the princess. The girl could not get used to that it was her estate. Next to her were two servants, who also bowed. They waited for the princess to receive the news of her return. To celebrate the return of the princess, the cook surpassed himself and prepared a whole feast. continued the maid. Come on. The princess headed for the servants. The countess asked whether the maid will feed her pigeons before dinner. The girl apologized. They were not prepared, since the princess first brought pigeons. They will now prepare food. How then she ate in the residence? So it will not work. There is too little information about the princess. The girl thought. There were many servants. Will she be able to find traces of Eleanor without betraying herself? Valoa was nervous. The servants set the table. She had a plan that needs to be made in order to reveal the secret and find the evidence of Eleanor. But for starters, dinner. For dinner, mushroom soup and fruit salad, an oyster plate with caviar, and a veal steak. I introduced a made dish. Here he is, the scope of the greatest princely kind. It seems, in terms of luxury, is not inferior to the imperial court. But if I want to check food for the poison, she needs to bring pigeons here, the girl thought. But how to say about it? Suddenly, the girl apologized and took a spoon herself to try the princess's food. Valoa was shocked. Is it really that a maid checks her food in Valoa's estate? She is clearly a devoted supporter of the princess, if she knows about the threat. It turns out the maid always supported the countess and was on her side. She can be trusted, the girl thought. She tilted the girl and said in a whisper, I want to see Eleanor right now. She could not continue to not know further. Valoa said strictly, Please. She must finally find out more information about what is happening. The girl silently looked at Valoa in surprise. Her request surprised the girl, but she obeyed. Having called into her bell, she called the servants, and they came to listen to the instructions of the maid. Called, madam. Close all the outer doors and cure all the windows. The girl commanded, clearly understanding what to do. As ordered earlier, let all the servants move along the worked routes within 3 hours. Eat, the guys answered. They left the dining room marching like soldiers. The girl ran a look at them. The princess was perplexed. The girl turned to the princess. Her gaze was strange. Valoa did not understand what would happen next. The maid sat on her knees and said, I spend you a princess where Lady Eleanor is to be. They set off the long corridor of the estate to the dowager princess. The girl illuminated the path with a lantern. Vala followed and was silent. She thought about what would happen further, but worried about future events. The maid turned around and said, Do not worry, the movement of the staff will disguise their movements. So why is this pacing along the routes? If everyone will move at the same time, no one can attack the trail. Even the most sensitive person, like Mr. Sword. Valoa thought to myself. She began to understand what was happening. They went to the door. We came to the maid and opened the doors with a creak. They went inside. Before the eyes of the girl, the chic chambers of Eleanor spread. It was very comfortable and beautiful here. The style was present. Lie Eleanor still rests in bed, the maid said, approaching the bed with the princess. Valoa saw a beautiful sleeping girl on the bed. Is this woman Eleanor, really? She had blonde hair. She looks much older than she was in the photo. Too old for his beloved, to zero more on the mother. The girl thought. How did Carden know that she did not know anything about the contract? The girl tried to collect the facts in her head in one. The princess trembled. The maid noticed this and called out to her. She was worried that the princess became bad. The girl turned around and said, Help me, I lost my memory. She decided to admit this girl to find out more. The maid asked, How Walla lost her memory. Either the side effect of poison or hit her head, the princess said. The girl fell to her knees and began to cry. My girl! Valoa was shocked by such a reaction of the servant. The princess knelt down in front of the girl and with hope in her voice asked, You can help me return my memory. Of course, mistress, I'll tell you everything, Hugs the maid said. She sincerely wanted to help the princess, Valoa thought. Does she know that her beloved girl is no longer in this world? The past princess is no longer. They sat down at the table, and the girl began the story. Valoa was born from the connection of a hereditary prince and a maid. Extraordinary child, the princess asked in surprise. In response, the girl only nodded her head silently. How so? The girl hated this word. She was the girlfriend of Valo's mother. She often hurt and always had poor health. When the princess's mother was very ill, the maid had to become a nurse for the little princess. She was always true. So they lived, enjoying peaceful days in the outbuilding. But when Valoa was 5 years old, mothers diagnosed infertility. The prince was a greedy man and made his daughter, the wife of the crown prince, to turn the emperor as he wants. At first, the maid was glad that Valoa would become a princess and could enjoy the luxury that she did not have. But very quickly, I realized that I was mistaken. The girl was not happy in the king's castle. She was sad and cried. Valoa was scared. She did not like the life in the palace, and she wanted to return to her home while she was small. The maid nervously shouted her hand and continued. She was tormented many times, whether to escape with the little princess. But I never did it. Valoa was surprised by such a decision. If she was so worried about her, why did not run away? Lady Eleanor took care of the princess very well and did not have a good relationship with Cardan. Valoa was shocked. They were friends with the prince before he left on the battlefield. After the departure of the Cardan, everything changed. Valoa stopped visiting the palace. Gradually, Valoa took all the concerns about her gender, and the maid almost did not manage to meet her. Once the girl brought Lady Eleanor to the family estate. Then everyone was very surprised by such a decision and appearance. Then the lady barely breathed. They did not call her some doctors. All as one said that there was no hope. After all the attempts of the doctors, the princess said to prepare a candle, and the maid went to the temple to bring it. In fact, a candle that stood in the temple is a marshmallow candle, not princess's. She put her there. With these words, the maid gave the princess a chest. Here is your real candle. Opening the chest, said the girl. There were 2 candles in the chest. One was burning, and the other faded. The fading candle belongs to Lady Eleanor. Is there something else that the princess ordered Eleanor to her estate? Eat. The servant answered timidly. If the princess candle goes out, she asked to kill the lady, too, with her on the same day. Concluding the story, the girl said, Valoa ran out with a box in the night garden. She was shocked by history, but now everything became clear to her. The girl fled, pressing the box to her chest. Now it is clear why Cardan emphasized as a puppet of Valoa, why so stubbornly came to the rescue of the princess, whom he hated. I recalled Cardan's fight with Lord Endon. After all, if Cardan wants to kill the princess, he must abandon his mother. This is very difficult, the princess thought. The princess entered into an agreement with the life of Eleanor. As a collateral, by which anything can do anything with the Cardan. The girl stood with a casket in the middle of the garden and realized what a tyrant she was actually, and not someone else. She screamed, Your Majesty, I know that you are here. I wanted to talk about Eleanor. She had to talk with the Cardan. Suddenly, a king appeared out of the darkness. There is no need to scream like that. I hear everything perfectly, he said, looking at the princess. The girl began to speak. As the king himself knows very well, she lived for several months, completely nothing. Cardan listened carefully to Valoa. What did she want to tell him what she remembers all? He thought. Only today she remembered what kind of contract they had. The girl continued, looking into the eyes of the king. It was very difficult for her. You! He said angrily, grunting to the Cardan's teeth. What this tyrant did with his mother, he thought. She is alive in general. As if feeling the mood of the king, said the girl. Do not worry. Everything is fine with Lady Eleanor. She is about something else. The girl was going with her thoughts. She did not know how to continue to speak, given the evil look and the mood of the Cardan. The king was waiting for the princess to say. His patience was at the limit, but he kept himself in his hands with all his might. Does it not want to conclude a Cardan with the princess a new agreement? The girl finally said. The king was very surprised. With these words, the princess opened her casket with a burning candles and handed it off to Cardan. She was waiting for the answer. Cardan did not believe his ears. What is such she offers him and generally talks about? He sharply bounced to the side. The princess did not remember what was happening. Why the Cardan has such a reaction to her offer. She wants the best. Suddenly, the king approached the girl and sharply grabbed the box from her hands. Valoa did not expect such a turn. He angrily asked, grabbing the box. Again, he will hang noodles on the ears. He did not believe Valoa. He knew what a tyrant she was. Cardan grabbed the girl by the shawl. Only a madman will believe the princess, knowing all her actions. He was very angry. I will no longer try to manipulate you and threaten you to get benefits, Valoa said. Cardan froze in shock. This means the princess will return his mother to him, he asked, letting go of the girl Cardan, with hope in her voice. He so wanted to see his mother. The princess was a little urinated, and then she said that this was excluded. She was afraid of the reaction of the Cardan, but she had no other choice. In return, the princess guarantees the safety of his mother. But how can she say this? Keep her mother at home, Cardan thought. This means that so far the king has not killed Valoa. Lady Eleanor is safe. She needed to survive at all costs. How he can trust her? The king asked. He had no confidence in the princess after everything that happened to his mother. Do you have a choice? Valoa asked. Although she lost her memory, she still remains the princess. Does Cardan consider that he will be able to save his mother whole and unharmed? The girl asked, holding an open box. There is only one way to protect Eleanor. It is to guarantee safety to her. The princess continued confidently. Cardan smiled yehidly. Here is such behavior and proposals, similar to the princess. He had no choice. He held out his hands to pick up the box and accept the princess's offer. He must save the life of his mother at all costs. The next day, a carriage from the imperial palace arrived at Valoa's estate. The princess was about to leave. The maid asked. The princess could not stay yet. She had not been to the estate for a long time. But Valoa was not going to stay. The girl wanted to say something to the maid, but hesitated. She was embarrassed to ask her about the service, given everything that happened. Finally, she just said, I ask you, as always, to take care of everything. The maid was surprised. This is obvious. Do not worry about the lady. Happy path, the maid said. And Valoa went to the carriage to leave the estate. Sitting, the princess exhaled in relief. How tired she is these days. So many things happened, she was exhausted. Suddenly, someone pulled the carriage door. The girl was surprised who could be. Did the maid forgot something? It was a Cardan. He held in his hands a casket with candles. He also headed for the palace and decided to ride together. Of course, sit down. The girl answered friendly. Despite nothing, she was glad to see the king and respected him. I thought to myself, here I have life. I wanted to take a breath in private, but apparently not fate. We'll have to be content with the company. The road was long, and the princess fell asleep. She dreamed of something, and she twitched in a dream. Cardan noticed that Wallo twitched. She probably dreams of some nightmare, the king thought to himself. He looked intently at the behavior of the girl. Because weak, Cardan decided for himself. He recalled her promises and understood that the princess would not say this. The king grabbed his head. He is confused. Is it possible to believe that the princess has changed? He was tormented by doubts. No, she, as always, tries to blow my head. The king decided nevertheless. He had great doubts. Valoa continued to sleep. She dreamed of something and began to mutter in a dream. Attracting the attention of Cardan, he looked at the girl. Sorry, I was wrong. Valoa spoke in a dream. Apparently the dream was terrible, and the princess began to cry. What can she dream? Cardan reached out with his hand to the princess's face. He thought what to do. Wake up and calm, or wipe tears. He pulled himself. That he was just about to do, why he held out his hand. This is a woman, like an enemy to me. Why all this? Suddenly, the king jumped and shook the carriage. From this, the princess woke up what was happening. The door is open. The carriage rings, she shouted. Your Majesty, you are fine. Why did he jump out of the racing carriage? What happened? The girl thought. The palace is still far away. Where is it? But suddenly, Valoa noticed that the Cardan left the box in the carriage. Cardan, meanwhile, walked in the palace. He thought he was shaken. He did not understand what was happening to him and what he was doing. All due to the fact that we were together in this cramped carriage. And all her actions play on my nerves. The king thought. Suddenly, he heard a scream. Your Majesty, wait! Behind him, with a box in his hands, was Walloa. She stopped the carriage. Don't get closer to me. Turning to the princess, shouted the king. He did not want to see anyone, especially her. Sorry, but you left, leaving the box. She held out Walloa. She wanted to return the king's thing. This is part of the contract, she asked with a smile. Their contract is still valid. What happened? Why did he run away from the carriage so abruptly? Yes, so Wallowa must certainly keep his promise. Cardan answered decisively. He worried about his mother, so that he does not abandon his mother, because he so much wanted to kill the princess. The living should live, Cardan said. With these words, the king took the casket from the hands of the princess and went on his way. He will not go with her. The living should live. These words seemed familiar to Wallowa. She already heard them somewhere before, but where? She recalled how the maid told her these words when the girl was sitting near Lady Eleanor's bed. She will definitely live well. These words echoed in the girl's head. Why did she remember this? Oh, what is this memory? Her head was dizzy, and she decided to continue the way in order to be distracted. After a while, the carriage arrived at the gates of the palace. Wallowa finally returned to the castle. Ahead is a lot of things, the girl thought. In the corridor, she saw the results who talked with the servant and decided to approach to find out the latest news from the palace. Young people noticed her and turned around to greet her, but suddenly fell silent when they saw the princess. They were confused by the appearance. Mistress, you have a wound on the neck, Eden said. The princess's neck was inflamed, and there was a wound. She grabbed her neck. Etan excitedly ran to the princess. He worried and asked how she was injured and what happened. They attacked her. The girl was confused. She did not know about the wound on her neck, and even more so how it happened to her. What to answer the lord? Someone tried to turn her neck. The princess decided to answer. What? In surprise, Etan asked him, surprised at such an answer. But he can really do this, so she closed her eyes to it. The girl continued. This is a joke. Idan hoped. She was suddenly attacked in the estate. He said that he should be near to protect the princess. The lord was angry. He tensed and remembered. On the day when the princess left, he saw a raven who followed her. Idan said, the emperor did not accidentally inflict this wound on his neck. Touching Wallowa, the lord asked. He was sure that it was Cardan. The girl pushed Utona. Ah, no, this is a trifling wound. Do not worry, the girl said. Why does he behave like that? Itan decided not to leave the princess unattended and said, Come on, I'll call the doctor right now. The doctor came to the princess's office. Suddenly, they knocked on the door. Log in. The girl answered, Is Cardan really come, or who could it be? Count Trebier came. He found out that the princess returned and came to greet. What happened to you, the wound on the neck? There is nothing like that. A small incident, the princess answered. She did not want to talk about it, especially with Count Trebier. What is the matter of the count himself? Surely he came not just to say hello, the princess said. Yes. The count answered, looking around. It seems that the Faust guessed about their plan. Although the count buys slaves and behaves as usual, they suspect him. He lured the aristocrats and got a new client. It is not surprising why the empress has no lack of funds. Wallowa thought that the departure of Trebier would be a significant blow to the market. But no. So this is for the client, the girl asked. Trebier tensed. This is the eldest son of Count Lenoa. Recently, it often has been wiped in Faust and is a new client. This did not surprise the princess. The villains of the rich are everywhere. The count continued that he was a good guy. He left to study. Now he returned and made a mistake. Does not understand the situation. Wallowa understood that this was excuses, but pretended to believe. She, too, is very interested in a foreign life, and asked the count to organize a meeting with her son, Lenoa. A few days later, the countess and the son of Count Lenoa took place in the palace garden. There was a chic table, the princess said. She heard that the guy from childhood abroad. She often fantasized about trips and decided to meet. The guy replied that he wanted to expand his horizons, so he traveled. No wonder. The princess answered Lukavo. Howard Lenoa laughed. He did not think that he would hear the same conversations abroad as in his homeland. Everyone told him that he is an ideal man, combining the mind and beauty. Howard continued with a grin. On what issue he returned? They say he somehow has a business. No wonder. The son of Lenoa was surprised at the knowledge of the princess. Wallowa said that the profane is in business. But I heard that this is such a breakthrough idea that it could change the situation of the market. Head answered, which he himself would like to tell in more detail, But this is a too personal conversation for the first meeting. Perhaps when they recognize each other closer. Howard said maliciously. What he was up to, what he has hoped for. Can nail it, the princess thought to herself with a smile. Too cunning, this Howard is not as simple as she thought. She decided to play along. That's how, I hurried, the princess said and stood up from the table. The guy liked the reaction. In truth, the princess immediately felt that it was fate. The girl continued the game. She had her own plan. Howard's eyes lit up. The princess continued. If they still meet, let him tell you more about himself. She is interesting. Howard sat in his carriage and left. Valoa thought that this man was hiding. He is more complicated than it seemed. Itan was nearby and watched Valoa when the guest left. He came closer. He heard their conversation. Is there a need to meet this buyer? Noticed the lord. Does she really like him? The princess is not like that. Valoa decided to joke, answering. And then that Itan will seduce him. The lord was dumbfounded and did not know what to say on this. She asked whether ITO was executed by the order. He said yes. He covered the wheels of a carriage of flower pollen pyther. When they put it, they will be able to start the pursuit of Howard by the smell of pollen. Great job, Valoa noted. Itan was surprised at such a praise of the princess. But why does she need all this? What is her plan? What she conceived? He was perplexed. Maybe he will stop calling her the mistress, the girl said. Yes, the mistress, the lord answered as he cut off. Suddenly, a carden appeared nearby. He again noticed the conversation of the princess with the outlook. He decided to approach them to flatter. Look, you are getting along very well, the king said, approaching Valoa and her servant. They did not notice the cardan and were surprised at his appearance. The girl immediately went away and greeted the king. Your Majesty, why he is here again, he is watching her. Valoa looked at the cardan and understood. Now again there will be a conflict between men. You need to do something. Itan stepped forward, stood up by Valoa. He thought the king wanted to hit her. He suspected him of wounding the princess's neck. He was silent and stuck gaze at Cardan. He hated him, but it was necessary to control himself. Cardan laughed and said slyly, Let the mistress take a walk. He also did not like the lord, especially as a servant of Valoa. Former general of the guard, quickly you moved away. The king turned to the end with a mockery. He used to be a faithful dog. Itan looked angrily at the Cardan, not to say a word. His hatred was displayed on his face without words. Cardan turned a blind eye to the secret surveillance of Outena. But now, after the change of owner, Cardan continued mockingly. He looks like a mad dog. The king finished. Itan grimaced with his teeth with anger. He was at the limit. The princess screamed, Your Majesty, forgive him for the audacity. I will take care of his re-education. The situation was heated. If henceforth, he will well defend his mistress Cardan to let him in such impudence, but no more. Looking intently into the eyes of Itan said, I understand you, Your Majesty. It was difficult for him to control his anger, but he was able to, the girl thought. It is necessary to do something, otherwise the situation may get out of control. But what? She was silent. Then she finally said, Itan, you can go. The lord wanted to object, but Valo said, Quicker. Call right away if you need something. It was reluctantly said by Itan, and left princess with the Cardan. You need to be humble. They went to the office and asked Valoa, what led such a busy person to her? She did not understand why Cardan came. Yes, someone scattered in loud words about the destruction of the slave trade, but I never received the report. The king said, It's okay. What kind of appearance you have? Cardan continued. The girl forgot that, still in an elegant dress after meeting with Howard. The princess answered. She went to meet with the son of Count Lenoa. Why is he suddenly interested in her appearance? In this form, you went to meet with these boy? Cardan asked angrily. Excuse me that I insulted the feeling of beautiful. She dressed up so to get information. But they will have to meet again. The king was not surprised at this outcome. If I look so bad, maybe you yourself will pick up an outfit for me, the princess suggested. Cardan was shocked. Cardan grinned and said, I will pick it up well. He again began to suspect the princess. Something is wrong here. After a while in the office, Itan said, Mistress, I have a bad foreboding. something will happen badly. The princess answered, "In this is in solidarity. If the leader said it is necessary, then it is necessary." They went to the hotel. The building of the Atelier Madame Rosé was very beautiful, large with a domed roof and curly lattices on the windows. Itan opened the door of Valoa and they went inside. It was embarrassed to be here, but this is necessary for business. There is no way out. Cardan was sitting. Madame Rosé stood nearby. "You have not been for so long. I already thought that they ran away." Cardan said, "The lover is not needed, so you can go." The king turned to the contribution. Valoa hit him on the shoulder, but the lord did not leave. "If you do not want to, stand in a mannequin in the corner." He said the Cardan, looking angrily at the lord. He remembered everything and experienced anger. Valoa thought, "Is the Cardan too much clings to the contribution from the last time? Maybe it's time to stop enmity." Madame asked. "She needs to choose an outfit for a lady." "Yes, something that you like the fool from abroad." The king said, "Leave it to me. She will do everything in the best possible way, and the king will be satisfied, like the girl." Smiling, said Rosette. She picked up a dress for Walloa and jewelry. The dress was with ruffles and flowers, purple, ideal for the meeting. Rosé picked up an outfit suitable for a private date, but not too pretentious. The woman said, "Real romantic fantasy. How does it suit you?" Rosé did not calm down. The girl did not want this outfit. She was upset. She wrapped her tears and said, "That she really likes this dress. You need to find out the information despite such an outfit." Rosé opened the screen and asked, looking at the Cardan and the results, "How do you like, gentlemen?" The lord stood aside, and the king was sitting. Valoa went out to show the outfit to men. She was embarrassed, and at the same time, very exciting. She was never evaluated. The girl was embarrassed. This dress was very good for her, and she was already used to it. She was waiting for the reaction of the king and the results. Men were shocked by the appearance of the princess. The faces were very surprised and shocked. They were silent for a while. Finally, Cardan said, "Compared to the fact that he is even worse, everyone was surprised at such a reaction. You think that you are going on a date. In this outfit, it is easy to become a target for a killer. Valoa is a black discreet outfit. The Rosette proposed in this case to choose an outfit." Eaton rushed forward. "No, lovers are waiting on the sidelines," the king said. He went to the countess and hung over her with his whole body. The princess was silent, waiting for what would happen next and what outfit he would choose. "Is it not more correct to choose a person with the right experience?" the king said with a grin. He seemed to mock the princess. He picked up a black dress for her and stood thinking about this outfit for Walloa or not. "In fact, I did not understand anything. I have no doubt about your insight, but you are sure that this dress is in the taste of the son of Count Lenoa," Princess clarified. "Didn't she say that he knew the tastes of such gentlemen best? The more hidden, the more interest in men." Itan came up. "Then you bring the search and track the movement of Howard, and I will delay Lenoa," the princess said. "You will definitely handle it alone," he asked the lord in alarm. She understood his anxiety, but it began to annoy. Did he forget that, although she looks timid and weak, still, she survived 2 attempts to kill? The girl noticed. Itan thought guiltily. One of the attempts to kill was his hands. He was very ashamed of his act. The men stared at her together. They looked as ridiculous as possible in their judgments. "Is it really weak?" "Okay." "I went," finally said the girl, heading for the door. She was tired of the competition between men. Valoa met with Howard. He plans to open his own business that will interest aristocrats. There would be investments. He does not get tired of praising himself. If this is not stopped, praises of themselves can continue for a very long time. The girl thought, "You probably need many workers to manage such a big business. Now it's so difficult to find skillful people." Looseworms existed by Howard. Can Harvey tell her about them? I inadvertently mistaken with the name of the princess. It just seemed to her that they needed affectionate nicknames for only 2. "Then he will call her Airy," added Howard. He poured himself wine and continued. "This is not for other people's ears, but in truth, he does not use workers in his business. That is, he himself copes with everything." The princess asked in surprise. She does not see the forest behind the trees, Howard noted. Why are workers when there are slaves? Everything is going on the market like clockwork. It is recently our people with heterochromia. They would not have managed if they were still abducted by people. Then they have been seized by many people, and you can provide a choice. When checking the finance of the Empress, there were a lot of expenses marked on charity. Hands pulled to the almshouses. They say Viscount Geoffrey collects women similar to elves. If Valoa, something needs to be said. But how to control so many slaves? The princess did not let up. Control why this is? Howard asked. They will still die all the same if they run away. Valoa's eyes shone with the hope of saving slaves. All the same, there is a way out, she asked in her voice with interest. They will die if they run away. She wanted to save slaves from this tyrant. Yes. Howard answered Howard with irritably. Why the princess is so violently interested in his business, why he is asking. Because all slaves are fed to poison and poison. The girl thought, so after escaping from slavery they quickly die. After abduction, people give a little antidote. If they do not receive it very quickly, give ends. Willowa thought, so if life is expensive, you want not to. But you can't leave the market. As if reading the thoughts of the princess, Howard added. The girl thought what to do next. He said that such terrible things are so calm, as about something ordinary. My Airy, you were scared. I said that this is not for the ears of exquisite young ladies, Howard said, touching the face of the princess. The girl got up and said, she was not afraid. It seems the guy went over whether it was time for them to leave. It's time to finish all this. He grabbed her hand, where she gathered after he touched his pride, saying that he was drunk from 2 bottles of wine. What is he talking about? The princess tried to escape from the grip of Howard. She shouted to let go, but he did not weaken his grip. Suddenly, a stone flew right into Howard's head, and he fell to the floor. The princess was shocked by what was happening. Who did it? A Cardan with a stone in his hand appeared in a broken window. It looks like he overheard the whole conversation and decided to save Valoa. Howard moaned in pain. The stone rolled away. He did not get up. Most likely his head was broken, and he is drunk. Where is the Cardan here? The princess asked. Yes, there is one screaming who insisted that I come. He buzzed all his ears. This rogue approached like a killer to grab the neck. No, he is a fool who approached. What to kiss? Kiss the princess. The king was surprised. We drove. I have something to tell. Let's get back to the palace, the girl suggested. They returned to the palace. Eden reported that they tracked all the movements of Howard in the last week. In addition to his house in the capital, he visited mainly restaurants, a men's club, a casino, and similar institutions. There were no places that could serve as the base of the slave traders. We returned to the beginning, he said Cardan listening to Eaton. Although we could not determine the place of the base, we found a thread leading to them. Walla noted holding the papers in her hands. Cardan took the papers to study. He noted again. This is the work of the Dowager Empress. She is again, Eton said. There is no doubt about this. When Catherine was seized and made by a slave, she was also in an almshouse. There are no objections. This week, the princess will secretly penetrate there that to find out in more detail, the girl said confidently. Eton shouted. It is too dangerous. He will do it better. No, they already know you in the face, the princess answered. Only high-ranking aristocrats know her face. If you make your face well, no one will guess. Rumor has it that Geoffrey Viscount is looking for women similar to elves with blue eyes and silver hair. Better to go to her. Eton began to get angry and argue. He did not want to endanger the princess. He wanted to go there himself, but Valoa was against it. He shouted, unable to withstand. Sell in the slaves of the emperor. Cardan replied that the lord was silent, otherwise he would kill him. The penetration of the king of the operating sword will be safer and more effective. Didn't the king warn about the behavior of Uten? They also have no brakes, the girl thought. In rages, of course, but the mistress is not so wrong. The Cardan suddenly said, it will be most effective to penetrate him. The king noted the rightness of the words. He thought what to do. In what place is it an elf with blue eyes and silver hair? The girl from such an absurd laughed to herself. How not to twist, the probability of capturing him will be higher. He infuriates that there is nothing to object. The girl noted. How he is going to recognize the poison, which is stuffed with slaves. Even capturing the main headquarters, we will not be able to find an antidote. Everything is dying. She will be able to recognize the poison, as she tried a lot of them, whether the Cardan will be able to. Fellow asked. The king thought. She took into account everything. I also have a reason for pride. I tried a lot of poisons. The king thought to himself, okay, let it go. But the princess should immediately give a signal as soon as it smells fried. The girl was very glad that she was able to convince. After all, her life belongs not only to her. He noted the king gazing at the princess. He remembered the agreement. Valoa was going to go to the slave traders. Please a Carano on the cheekbone or next to the chin. I asked for a Cardan. She asks to hit her. Surprised by the request of the king. Yes. Valoa answered. She wants to penetrate the almshouse. If she does not sell her, but they will leave her at the base until the bruise does not come off. Therefore, she asks to hit. Who else should she ask? Aiden does not dare. The ships for the past time, as he grabbed her neck, he had more than enough forces. He was wrong at that time? Cardan answered shortly. He felt sorry for his act and did not think that there would be bruises. The girl was surprised that the king apologizes to a friend. Why would it try to play along or telling the truth? It was not worth doing this. He brings his sincere apologies. Cardan continued his apologies. He really is sorry. The king asked her forgiveness. This simply cannot be. The girl did not believe her ears. What happened to him? Between us, this is quite natural. Because from the point of view of the king, she is a vile villain who captured his mother. Cardan stuck and thought about the words of the princess. What is she talking about herself? He sincerely apologized. He grabbed her by the cheekbone and pulled her. Here she is a fool. Thus, he wanted to leave the bruise she asked for. He thinks by the evening a bruise will appear. Now go, he told the girl. Valoa did not expect everything that would be so. He handed the carriage so that the girl went to the almshouse not on foot. The carriage was waiting at the gate, and the princess hit the road. Cardan again called the crow to him. He was angry that the princess herself went to such a dangerous place and to such a task. He clenched his fists and told the bird, Gently, trace. Cardan knew that Vala opened his crow. If he noticed, he would be angry. Immediately, tell me if there is even the slightest hint of danger. With these words, the bird flew after the princess's carriage. Valoa arrived at the market in the city center. She was in a cloak. There were many people around her. She stood out from the crowd. Children fled for distillations. I am the first. No, I am the first. They shouted, catching each other. They fled for bread. Give the bread. Where are you climbing out of line? Children pushed. The baker reassured them. There is enough bread for everyone. Do not push. Valoa decided to approach them, and the baker noticed a stranger in a cloak. What kind of stranger is this? He also wants bread. Girl, you also came for bread? He called out the baker. The girl was afraid, not knowing what to answer. She thought. She took off the cloak and touched her bruise, asked. And I can too. You need to play your role as believable as possible. Oh, the poor thing seems to be hard for you. Noticing the bruise, said the baker. He has a plan in his head. Maybe let's not stand on the street, but slowly we will talk inside. The man suggested that the Waloa is inside. She was still taken hostage and brought on a carriage to an unfamiliar place. She had a handcuff. There were also other girls. They arrived in the same almshouse. It was a huge fortress with a wooden gate. Not like the slaves' market. Do not believe that they hid such a giant fortress near the capital. The guards spoke this order by Jeffrey. You need to be more careful with her. One of the guys turned to the girl. Do not even think about the shoot, Nu. If she, of course, wants to leave her pretty face in integrity. Aside beaten other slaves, the guards stared at the girl. The princess did not understand what was happening, why he was looking like that. Really found out. He grabbed her neck and tore off the pendant. And now he screamed, mine. No, this thing I got from my mother. The girl shouted, How dare you, bastard! The guard hit the girl with all his might, and Valoa fell to the floor. She must yield to him. To be able to track it, she filled the pendant Pithora. But if she is already inside, then the pendant can be given. The princess decided. The most important thing she hid separately. Let the pendant take. Valoa thought to herself, but she doesn't beat her. Here you have for the necklace. Threw something in the palm of the girl. A guard? What is it? There was an incomprehensible ligament similar to food. The girl looked in her palms. What is this? She did not understand what to do with this. Eat or throw it away. Parasites cure. Surely you are all teeming with them. This is for your benefit, so swallow it once. The guy continued. Parasites cure. How for sure poison? The girl thought to herself, you need to quickly make a decision. She looked at the poison again and thought. She decided to drink him so as not to arouse suspicion of the guard. I hope these two will not be late. With these thoughts, the girl swallowed a piece of poison. Cardan and Iton should save her. Meanwhile, the bloodhounds were sent from the kingdom, following the trail of Knyazna Valoa. They sniffed the ground, looking for a trace of the girl. On the horses, Cardan and Iton slowly advanced behind them. It is necessary to get to the princess as soon as possible and not be late. How slowly the Cardan noted. But suddenly he saw in the sky a circling raven and was delighted. It will be faster. Throw the dogs and follow me, the king said. What are you talking about? Iden was perplexed. The hostess said to track her down the flower pollen. Then stick out here all day. Cardan decided, and taking his horse quickly went after his raven. Iton was perplexed where the king was going. Did he really recognize the road, but how the dogs stayed with him, so they are still looking for a trace. The lord got angry with the king's behavior and turned to see how far he rode his horse. Iton decided to trust Cardan and follow him, leaving the dogs behind. It will be very long, you need to take a chance. The king triumphantly noticed that the lord was heading after him. All the same, he was the faithful dog of his mistress. The dogs also smelled a trace of the princess and went for men. They got to the fortress where they held Valoa. Iton was very tired of the long road and went down from the horse. He went to the bushes and looked out, looking at the tower. Already the whole body is breaking from the fact that I stick out here all day. The lord saw the guards who guarded the passage. No one is going to escape, you can warm up, one guard said. The other answered, they soon get off from the medicine. When the old Fatik asked the elf, they thought of his insanity. No one will know if he has fun a little, the guard said. Iton was shocked by this conversation. He realized what they were talking about the princess. You need to act. He took out his saber. The concubine wants to ruin everything. The guys discussed in a whisper. Suddenly they heard a noise outside the gate and turned around. What's happened? It was a raven that shot up in the sky and distracted the attention of the guard. They did not immediately notice him, someone else thought. Suddenly, a Cardan appeared, and wrapping around the outline of Utana. You say everything is the mistress, but you yourself do not know what she really needs. And what should I now let them go with such words? Eden was indignant. He wanted to fight the guards. Cardan held him. The king was silent, for continued. She is Princess Valoa, so that everything will be in order. He asked the lord not to rush. Iton cleared his throat after the king's capture. He calmed down a little, but still nervous. It is necessary to save the princess. Cardan was also nervous, but convinced himself. Yes, everything is in order with her. But there was no confidence in him. It remains only to wait. Meanwhile, Valoa was taken to the camera. Do not even think to escape if you do not want to die, the guard said. She ate the poison for a long time, but there are no symptoms. It was definitely a poison, or gave a small dose so that they would not guess. Valoa decided to talk to others. Sorry, the guard said that if I run away, I will die. I turned to the girl, the princess. You're new. The girl looked inquiringly. This is true if you run away. Therefore, it is not worth it. And how the escapers died. They crooked blood. Whether they had convulsions, their heart hurt. The princess asked. She did not know. They said they died because of the poison. But whether it was true, they could lie. But to kill themselves. Better not eat then. Surely it is already known that the medicine for parasites is poison. In food, an antidote. If you do not eat, die. The girl continued. Valoa thought, everything is very strange. You're lucky, you are beautiful, you will quickly get out of here. The slave continued. A guard came with the pies. Feeding, I follow you so that do not dare to eat someone else's food, he said. He laid out the pies on the plate in the cell. A lot of hungry hands immediately reached for food. Apparently noted often, Valoa was surprised by such wildness for food. Suddenly, the girl handed her a pie. And the princess was even more surprised. You also eat faster. Some select food thinking that they can neutralize the entire poison if they eat a lot. Valoa hesitated. This is not so. There is nothing like that either. If the antidote is in food, then when they give out poison. Why give out poison? If you stay here for a long time, eat a lot of buns. It is necessary to feed again so that the poison does not neutralize. Maybe, the girl answered. But she has not remembered here for a long time that they would give something except ordinary feeders. Valoa was surprised. Surely there is no one who would eat a cure for parasites twice. Who really lies and why? What's happening? Valoa thought. What is this strange poison? The girl noticed this and asked, What you think about? It has already been decided where you will be sent. Pray that your bruise will quickly get. Then you can finally get out of this damn place. At night, a guard entered the camera, who planned something terrible. He opened the castle with his key and checked that everyone was sleeping. Valoa was asleep, and the guard approached her. Even in the dark, the face is what you need, he said. The girl woke up, but did not give a look. At night in prison is dangerous. Nonsense! They hold me for a fool! The guard continued with himself. The princess pretended. She thought, What to do? Scream. No, the guards who came running is unlikely to intercede for her, need to escape. Valoa decides to wait and attack with one blow of the guard with his own dagger, which is on his belt. She remembered this. The guard was surprised at such a turn. What she does. The girl grabbed a dagger and took it out of the cover. She swung at the man and struck. It was necessary to escape at all costs, even if you have to kill a person. What's happening? The guard dodged. The girl did not expect that it would be so difficult. She did not own weapons. Valoa wounded the guard right into the palm of the dagger, and the blood poured out of his hand. He did not even react to pain. And you are a little thing with a character, the man said and suddenly shouted in wild pain. He fell, his face was red. What happened? She did not reach the vital organs. Everyone slept. The girl decided to hide the dagger back. She felt a strange smell in the air. This is a lulling gas. There is no more here except for lulling grass. The bitter smell. The poison that is able to poison only with its pairs. Is it really? The girl grinned her thoughts. She realized what it was. Everything is clear, Princess said with a smile. She solved another riddle. Soon everything is decided. The poison, obtained at the very beginning after the capture, is completely neutralized if you eat several buns with antidote. If you feed the poison several times, prisoners can guess, so they use gas for re-poisoning. If the girl's guesses are true, then the guard also poisoned with gas. The guard coughed and began to move. He came to his senses and got angry very much. You! How did you dare me? Do you have time? The girl said. Now other guards will come for distribution of food. The guard understood that he needs to leave so that he is not spotted. You will still pay! The guy shouted angrily after Valoa. Whether she wants to give her a key, she will tell something. What are you crazy? The guy answered. He held the key in his hands. The girl wanted to warn him, but as she wants. The guard closed the camera to the castle and quickly ran away so that others would not be caught. Otherwise, he would be punished. She wanted to warn him to accept the antidote or leave everything as it is in order to check her hypothesis. Is it really that the fellow people become like the owner of the body? How then I differ from Princess Valoa? The girl thought. Suddenly, a scream rose. Here a person is unconscious. The guard went from his mouth. Others found him near the camera. The girl was surprised that he was going on. Maybe he ate something wrong. The princess was silent. Her hypothesis was justified. She decided to give her pie to the girl. Eat this one. But how did Tom ask the cellmate? Why is the princess doing this? She has immunity to poisons, so everything is in order. You know that you are strange, the girl asked. Often I hear it. The girl began to eat a pie. My name is Sally. I used to live in Hesbon. The girl introduced herself. Again Hesbon, the princess thought. She smiled, and I am Airy. Call me like that. The princess decided to introduce herself. Suddenly, someone shouted what kind of booth was here. What is happening here? Why the guard died and he has foam from his mouth. Valoa turned around. It came to the Faust with his people. It came to the Faust with his people. The plan can fail. Passed by and looked at the noise. The owner of the slave trade answered. The girl sat in a corner and covered her face. He knows her in the face. She mentally begged the Faust to just leave, and he went the corridors of the chambers, gradually gently moved away from the camera from the princess. Tomorrow the customer should arrive, so be careful for first-class goods. He ordered the Faust. It is dangerous, and to continue to stay here. In the evening we will arrange a performance. The princess decided. It is necessary to get out of here until it's too late. The evening has come. The raven flew over the tower. Eton and Cardan were still waiting for news from the princess near the gate. Early, not Majas, and wait, Cardan said. As soon as the hostess gives a signal, I will start with this villain, Eton said. The raven flew over the Cardan. The king understood the news and said, It looks like this is not required, and the hostess was ahead of him. They saw the guards who carried the corpse of their king. She stuck out from under the cloak, only a wounded hand in a glove. Valoa was ahead of the lord. The king celebrated with joy. So everything turns out not as bad as he thought. The princess continued to sit in prison. She realized that the time has come for the performance that she conceived, since it was already evening. She screamed, attracting the attention of the guards. I can no longer endure. If I spend here for another minute, I will go crazy. Quiet! The guard shouted. The other pulled him. Wait, she is a product for the customer who will arrive soon. Valoa began emitting loss of consciousness. Please at least a short walk. Help! She will injure herself, Sally said. Hurt. The guards looked at each other in surprise. But what? She has a weapon or 2 long nails. They brought the girls into the yard. I give exactly 10 minutes, the man said. Hooray, fresh air, screamed Valo, running around the yard. Calm down. If at least one hostage runs, they do not say hello, the guard shouted. Elena was surprised what she was doing here. How long ago it has not been outside. I would not stand even to be in captivity. What you took out? Suddenly the guy noticed. The princess took the firecracker from her pocket and turned around. This, her plan, and she began to act right now. She pulled the lace. The guards were horrified and shouted that she was Czech. They did not know what to do. The huge salute banged, raised the noise. But this was only the beginning of the plan of the princess. Then it will be more interesting. She released a signal missile. For the results and Cardan. She smiled, rejoicing in success. Sally was in full shock. I will not lower it to you. An evil guard with a saber was approaching them. He wanted to punish naughty slaves. Valoa realized that she would be defended and took out a dagger from a cover taken from the deceased guard at night. She began to fight. Their daggers touched. The girl did not own weapons, but if I wanted to survive, there was no way out. Sally was very scared. She did not know how she could help. She had no protection. She stood in a stupor. While the princess fought with one of the guards to them, the second also hastened with weapons. Sally screamed, Irina! She squeezed the dagger stronger in her hand and closed her face. The princess was preparing for the worst outcome of events. Suddenly, the guards exclaimed who, a moment later, lay those killed in front of the princess in the puddles of blood. Valoa was surprised. It was Eton who came to the rescue. We have searched you, mistress, he said, approaching the girl. He took revenge on everyone. Now he will protect her. He continued, the lord holding out his hand. You need to get out of here as soon as possible. Others will come now, Eton asked. Whether she had to. He sincerely worried about the princess, because at one time she saved his life. I asked me to call me the princess. The girl answered with a smile. The lord arrived just in time and saved her. Of course, the mistress. The lord answered. He in debt to the princess will be called the mistress on her, because he is her servant. Sally stood scared. Valoa said, Do not worry. People from the imperial palace came for their salvation. The girl asked. Imperial palace. The emperor will eliminate this group and save all the stolen people. Sally was very surprised. Emperor, really? She did not believe in what was happening around. This is a dream. Or reality? The girl asked. And you are Eri, the princess answered. Yes. But this man just called you princess. Didn't she come here either to save the hostages? Valoa answered. Let's go to you, and I was only a bait. It's that you helped me get out, not the emperor, and I am grateful to you for 100 times more for salvation. The girl continued. Valoa did not expect such gratitude. After all, she did nothing. I only laughed back. She saved herself too. The knights came from the palace and said, Valoa, they will help Sally safely get home. She worried about the girl. If she is so grateful to her, let her write a letter on arrival home. Of course it is necessary. Grandfather probably turned the entire castle upside down. My grandfather is a butler in the house of Count Hespen. Is it really the butler who shouted that the count turned the estate into a devil? I imagined how he screamed because of his granddaughter. Valoa could not believe that Grandfather Sally was an old butler who wanted to kill her. He has such a cute granddaughter. After all, this man was already punished due to an attempt on her. But the girl does not know what to do. Eden came up and said, Go there and the knights will help you get to the Hesben County and take protection. Eri will definitely meet, Sally shouted at the end. Good to you, Valoa answered. Her head was spinning terribly. Eaton picked up the princess. You are not good, mistress, he asked. Just dizzy. Suddenly, someone shouted, Stop, cool, focus on the plan. And the girl returned from thoughts. It was a cardan. He approached and carried some jacket in his hands. He found them again with the outlook together. Now it will begin again. The king looked angrily, burning the gaze of Valoa and the count. He hated them both. Or maybe he was jealous, was afraid to admit to himself. The hand of the results was at the girl's waist. He supported her when his head was spinning. But how to explain it to the king? Cardan angrily threw his jacket into the lord, but he deftly caught her. Faut still did not find. The king reminded, only having caught it can they talk about the elimination of the slave market. Before that, the case has not yet been completed. Maybe instead of empty chatter, it is worth looking for Faust with the help of dogs. Turning around, ITO was noticed. Dogs walked nearby. Valoa said, This is a Faust jacket. Let it in hurry until the leader escaped. She is in perfect order. Cardan said maliciously, I will take care of your mistress myself. He did not miss the opportunity to angry Outno. The king did it. The lord angrily looked at him, barely restraining his emotions. I obey your majesty. Eton left Cardan and Valoa on one. They both were silent, each immersed in thoughts about what happened. The king suddenly said, after a long silence, This is not your fault. He stared at Valoa, but did not continue.